Chapter 1143, A Samsara. Chapter 1143, A Samsara. A dark purple flame glowing dazzlingly flew out of little Fatty's left pupil. It flickered and released a dominant soul energy fluctuation. Little Fatty squinted his bead-like eyes. He used the dark purple flame to sense the auras of other people around him. The dark purple flame danced and sent flows of soul consciousness hundreds of miles away in just a blink. This process didn't take a long time. He retrieved the dark purple flame into his head and laughed harmlessly. Those women are staying far away from us. They can't hear us for sure. Thus, you can tell me the story of Grace Mainland. Yeah, by the way, I'm Kang Yoon. You can call me Little Kang or Little Yoon. It's up to you. Don't be too distant. Little Fatty was a member of the Heavenly Monster tribe. However, he wasn't born in Grace Mainland. He had always been curious about Grace Mainland that had given birth to their tribe. As he had suddenly found Yang, a guy from Grace Mainland, of course, he wouldn't let this opportunity to know more about his homeland slip away. The Grace Mainland's energy is exhausted. Warriors who used to stay there are now in Agate Star area. About Grace Mainland, throughout the immemorial epoch, the Antiquity era, and the ancient time, it was in the hidden corner of the edge of this universe. It's hard to contact the outer world. Yang told him everything he knew. Is there a place called the Heavenly Monster Mountain Range? Asked Kang Yoon all of a sudden. Yes, nodded Yang. After we're done with this, can you take me there? Kang Yoon's fat face shivered slightly and showed his thrill. No problem, Yang agreed. Anything special? Asked Kang Yoon. Nothing. After thinking carefully, Yang shook his head. Kang Yoon quieted down. He pulled himself together, arranging his words for a while before starting slowly. I can't tell the exact location of ancient demon continent. It should be like Grace Mainland and in a crack by the edge of the cosmos. Anyway, I know how to get in there. He looked at Yang and said, if you want me to bring you there, I can do that too. But I want to make it clear that ancient demon continent isn't very different from Grace Mainland. The energy there is exhausted and there are no members of the immortal demon clan dwelling. He said continuously. Kang Yoon was one of the holy beast Azure dragon descendants of the Heavenly Monster tribe. The bloody war between the Heavenly Monster tribe and the Imperial Dark tribe that had shaken even the big star areas ended with the Heavenly Monster tribe's defeat and seclusion. Members of the Heavenly Monster tribe had to try their best to hide and find a secret place to cultivate ascetically and avoid the Imperial Dark tribe's pursuit. And in a very accidental situation, they found ancient demon continent. When they got there, they found that this continent had been barren for years. They didn't see any members of the immortal demon clan. At that time, the ancient demon continent hadn't had much energy. It wasn't suitable for high-level creatures to cultivate anymore. However, as the Heavenly Monster tribe had just been defeated, they just wanted a place to stay. Moreover, they had a lot of divine crystals. After a brief discussion, they decided to stay in ancient demon continent. Kang Yoon was born in the ancient demon continent. One time, when Kang Yoon was cultivated underground, he had reached too deep and he accidentally touched the origin. Afterward, he had fused the origin with his soul altar. After many years, members of the Heavenly Monster tribe started to leave the ancient demon continent and started secluding in other star areas. Kang Yoon had also followed his fellows and left. When the members of their tribe all left ancient demon continent, it was completely depleted. It was just a barren, desolate star that didn't have any signs of living beings dwelling. It was merely a dead star. However, as Kang Yoon had recently found the origin of the ancient demonic continent, he found that the continent was like a dry tree sprouting in the spring. It seemed to wake up one more time and it started to gather energy from outer space. Ancient demon continent seemed to begin a new samsara and have a marvelous transformation. After he had found that, he came to consult with his precursors in the tribe. Then, he understood a fact: the ancient continents would never be completely depleted. The earth and heaven energy in an ancient continent had the samsara or the reincarnation circle. It would have ups and downs too. When the earth and heaven energy there had reached its peak, it would gradually decline. After its energy was totally exhausted, the magical process of gathering energy would start once again. It would be able to collect energy from outer space and accumulate it. Ancient demon continent had been collecting the free energy in outer space. According to the elders of the heavenly monster tribe, the 5 ancient continents had a marvelous connection. When the other 4 ancient continents were in the worst stage of lacking energy, Desolate would have the richest energy. In this stage, Desolate would give birth to the treasures that were the most precious in this world. It was the rare chance of tens of thousands years for the warriors to enter Desolate at this point of time. Whoever could get to the center could harvest the items he had always dreamed of. Thus, Kang Yun went to this area under the arrangement of the elders of his heavenly monster tribe. You say that ancient demon continent is reviving? Shi Yang shouted in astonishment. It's true, Kang Yun smiled until his eyes narrowed. Not only ancient demon continent. I think that God-blessed mainland and ancient god continent are about to be depleted. Also, they are going to gather energy remnants in outer space once again. Rumors say that the energy cycles of the 4 ancient continents are amazingly similar. They have a close connection. If Grace Mainland doesn't have Earth and Heaven energy anymore, the other continents will face the same problem. Today, as ancient demon continents reviving, the other 3 will have the same situation. So Haig, Audrey, you and I all have the origin of the ancient continents and we're all here. Shi Yang pondered and frowned. The ground under our feet and the origins we have a special connection. You're here because of your elder's arrangement and I'm here because of a man. I think it happened the same to Haig and Audrey. The fact that we're gathering here and what Desolate has should have some connection. He eyed Kang Yun without blinking once. Can you tell me more? To this very moment, Shi Yang understood that Kang Yun appearing here by the lake wasn't because he wanted to see Cecilia and Shong Yingyu bathing. His purpose was to lure Shi Yang out. In other words, Kang Yun was here because of him. Don't look at me. I don't actually know the details. Kang Yun shook his head continuously and said with confusion, I don't know. My precursor just told me to go to the center. Something will happen there. And I think my precursor and your immortal demon precursor have contacted. They told me that if I met you by chance here, I should cooperate with you. Why has nobody ever told me this? Shi Yang was enraged all of a sudden. It was the feeling when someone had discreetly set you up for something that you didn't know. Shi Yang didn't like this feeling. He had come here because Shong Chen had come to him and Frederick, one of the bloodthirstiest Cortage of 8, had asked him to do so. Discreetly, a pair of hands was planning everything for him, manipulating him and making him work as the other pleased. He didn't feel cool with this. Don't ask me. I know nothing, said Kang Yun dispiritedly. Shi Yang darkened his face. Contemplating for a while, he said, all right. Then tell me. What should we do now? I don't know, Kang Yun shook his head. My precursor told me to do my best to cooperate with you. I don't know the details. They told me that, you will know what to do gradually. They told me to listen to you. I will know gradually? What the heck would I know? Said Shi Yang agitatedly. The feeling of getting his fate decided by someone else displeased Shi Yang a lot. He wanted to curse out loud. Hey, you have a strange ring, don't you? Kang Yun rubbed his head and asked all of a sudden. They said that you could know what to do from the ring. I don't know what it means. Shi Yang changed his countenance. He instinctively looked at the blood vein ring, his thoughts flickering. The soul memory of the ring spirit wasn't complete. It was still dormant now. It hadn't talked to him for a long time. After many failed attempts, he had almost forgotten it. He remembered the ring when Kang Yun reminded him. Perhaps the blood vein ring could give him some directions. He immediately contacted the ring spirit. Unfortunately, he got no response. The ring spirit seemed to disappear, which made him begrudging. Audrey will come here soon. Kang Yun gave a cough. He stylishly took out an exquisitely made robe and put it on. The robe shrouded his white, shining fat body and gave it a magical aura. The faint monster aura of his gradually disappeared. Shi Yang couldn't find anything wrong with this boy. No matter what he tried to investigate and sense, Kang Yun was just an ordinary, fat human boy. There was nothing he could find to connect him with his heavenly monster tribe kin. He looked at Kang Yun in awe. Our tribe and the Imperial Dark Tribe are mortal enemies. If she finds out my identity, she will kill me for sure. Kang Yun smiled dryly and embarrassedly, which pushed the rolls of fat on his face together. I will tell her that I came here from Harson's. I have to join you guys to ensure that I won't be killed by Harson or Haig. What do you want after all? Said Shiyang with a dark face. He always felt that Kang Yun had hidden something from him. He felt that Shong Ying had his own decisions, but he didn't have anything to guess or read the other's mind. Although this little fatty looked naive and innocent, he was really smart that even Shiyang couldn't read his moves. I'll listen to you. Kang Yun smiled and showed his servile face. I don't know what to do, but I know it's not wrong to follow you. You will always get it. Shiyang. Someone is coming. Cecilia and Shong Ying dashed together from afar as they all sensed strange energy movement, which was strong and cold and made them tense and nervous. It's Audrey. Shiyang didn't change his countenance. She found you when she used her soul consciousness to patrol. She's worried, so she came to check you out. Kang Yun squinted his small eyes, leaning against a tree casually as if he wasn't afraid of Audrey coming. Chapter 1144, The Charteris Family. Chapter 1144, The Charteris Family. The ear-splitting howling wind came near. The gloomy bolts of lightning dashed over and reached the area immediately. Audrey and the 4 members of the Imperial Dark Tribe appeared in front of Shiyang and Kang Yun. Her cold and arrogant eyes raked through the 2 of them and stopped right at Kang Yun. She shouted, "Who are you?" Flows of soul energy moved like the fine silk threads, slowly entangling Kang Yun and lingering around his body. She wanted to see even Kang Yun's smallest secrets. Shiyang was so surprised, so he also stared at Kang Yun too, his face uncertain. Any energy fluctuation from Kang Yun was so normal. Since he was a descendant of the immemorial heavenly monster tribe, he should have something different from the other races. However, Shiyang could see that Kang Yun's realm, aura, and god body were 100% matched with human clans. He didn't know how Kang Yun did it, but he could confirm that Audrey couldn't see anything abnormal. She couldn't verify Kang Yun's real identity. Indeed, after Audrey's bright eyes had moved around for a while, she relaxed. I came from the other side. Kang Yun smiled, trying to be servile and pointing at the sea area behind him. Harson of the Charteris family is in charge of that area. Before I came here, Harson had finished his big cleaning. Besides me, everybody else was killed. Audrey's face showed a gleam of fear. Both Shiyang and she were vigilant to Kang Yun. The warrior who could escape Harson wasn't weak. Soon, Audrey had considered Kang Yun a character she shouldn't neglect. How many people are there in Harson's team? Did they get a significant loss too? She contemplated, then asked. Harson leads 18 warriors. If you know about the Charteris family, you must know how crazy and ruthless they are. Kang Yun worriedly rubbed his fat face. Harson's troops are all madmen. They kill people for fun. The Charteris family of the God Clan is the most bloodthirsty one. Even among the families of the God Clan, they aren't very likable. The God Clan's Charteris family was infamous. Their name was known everywhere in this vast universe. Among the 12 families of God Clan, this family ranked right behind the Bradley family. Members from this family were all extremely bloodthirsty. Also, they were the most combative family of God Clan. This family was the key force in each battle that had terrorized the universe. And the originators of the bloody cases were also from this family. When the Charterizers invaded a lifestar, they would eradicate the native race. People couldn't live in peace wherever they passed by. The Charteris family was known as the cleaner of the God Clan or the racial terminator. This family was a malignant tumor of the cosmos, the worst nightmare of all. They were a sharp bloody saber of the God Clan. They had invaded and slaughtered everywhere. People hated them, but they were also afraid of them. This family had a lot of mad men. The family members and their key disciples loved to massacre others. Harson was a famous, young lunatic of the current generation. His brutal reputation made him even more well known than Haig. He was a tough character that no one wanted to encounter. Hearing that Harson had finished cleaning the sea area and still had 18 warriors in his team, Audrey's willow-like brows furrowed. Her cold face now had a dark gleam. The Charteris family wasn't easy to counter. Harson was a mad dog. When they met him, it would result in someone's death. If Haig could gather with the Charterises when they got to the forest territory, Audrey's team wouldn't escape death. I heard that Haig, MIA, and Phelps are on the other side of the barrier. Little fatty Kang Yoon looked desperate. Haig is coming. And that mad dog Harson is here too. I'm afraid that we can't resist them. He had deemed himself a member of this team. Audrey didn't mind his hidden meaning. Her long eyelashes batted as she was thinking. Shi Yang, Cecilia, and Kang Yoon didn't say much. They were waiting for Audrey's decision in silence. They understood that if they let Harson and Haig gather, it would be a lethal threat to them. The center will open in any minute. Perhaps it will open tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Once we get to the center, it's possible that our team will be smashed. Audrey contemplated for a while, her cold eyes raking through her people. Before the center opens, the God Clan will move. They won't give us more chances. Even if we can get to the center, we will be smashed. The God Clan wants to terminate us. However, after we get into the center, it would be very difficult to kill us all. Kang Yoon, Shong Ying Yu, and Cecilia nodded. Apparently, they knew the situation, so they agreed with Audrey. Only Shi Yang was still surprised. He came here in a rush and Shong Chen didn't tell him many details. Clueless, he jumped into this place. He knew nothing about the center. When they got into the center, they would be smashed again. Thus, everybody had to start over again. Then, he might encounter 1 or 2 warriors of God Clan and he might have a chance to kill them. So, it was good for him somehow. Haig and MIA also knew this. Thus, they had to seize the chance when the center hadn't opened yet to clear the remaining opponents. Only after killing all of them would the God Clan operate freely in the center. They could go to harvest the most precious items and they could understand the mysteries of the ancient continent. We must seize the chance when Haig and Harson haven't united yet. We must choose to break one team. We must try our best to deprive their powers. It would prevent them from attacking us successfully even if they could gather later. Audrey decided quickly and said resolutely, Haig, MIA, and Phelps are together. It's not a wise move to engage in a battle with them now. We can't take the upper hand. Thus, we're going to Harson. Harson doesn't have the origin. Once we get to the sea territory, I can locate him. We have the advantage. Taking a deep breath, Audrey's breasts heaved. We must do it quickly. She didn't seem to want to hear Shi Yang's or Kang Yoon's opinions. She decided and then ordered the 4 members of the Imperial Dark Tribe. Announce to them and ask them to gather quickly. The 4 members of the Imperial Dark Tribe bowed to her and then disappeared like dark beams of light. They vanished from people's sights shortly. You lead us and break the barrier. Take the way you took to come here and lead us back there. Audrey ordered Kang Yoon and didn't give him a chance to protest. Little Fatty smiled brightly and nodded continually. He seemed to know how to behave in this situation. Shi Yang looked at him and put up his guard discreetly. He thought that this little fatty had brains. At this moment, as he was facing Audrey, a member of his mortal enemy tribe, he could be much flexible. This boy was a dangerous character. Shadows drew nearer. The warriors of different races scattering around were summoned by the 4 experts of the Imperial Dark Tribe. They congregated as fast as they could. Not long after that, Mo Fu, Sho Jiao, Wu Feng, Jiao Shan, and the others also arrived. They looked at Shi Yang, their eyes asking for his opinions. Shi Yang frowned, but he didn't explain. After they all gathered, Audrey said, We're going to the sea territory to counter Harson. We must seize the chance when Harson hasn't joined Haig yet. We will try our best to drain Harson's force. She didn't explain clearly. Afterward, she shot Kang Yoon a look and ordered him arrogantly, Take us there. Kang Yoon laughed brightly. He nodded continually before starting to move like a fat squirrel weaving through thick woods. His flexible and agile moves made people gawk. His fat body moved swiftly in the air as if he had encountered no obstacle. Just like a big airbag, He flew quickly in through the air. "Oh wow, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover," said Cecilia in astonishment, her beautiful eyes flaring strangely. "After him," ordered Audrey. By the edge of the swamp territory in front of the toxic gas curtain, Haig suddenly shouted. People looked at him cluelessly. They didn't know why he suddenly screamed. Haig was calm. When he found that Audrey was setting up a lot of barriers and restrictions on the other side of the barrier, he had ordered people not to go through there rashly. He sat cross-legged in front of the toxic air masses, closing his eyes as he was immersed in his thoughts and trying to find a solution that could benefit them. He had let MIA and Phelps leave this place to lure Audrey. Unfortunately, Audrey didn't move. She just watched the area where she had installed the death traps and waited for him to take risks and come to her. The two of them were playing the same chess match, but none of them dared to act recklessly. They had tried to maintain the original state. When Haig found that he couldn't wait for Audrey to bite his bait, he summoned MIA and Phelps to make a new plan. He was using his special ability of the soul consciousness to draw a map. Under his feet was an area where he pointed out the locations of barriers and restrictions behind the barrier. He had even given the descriptions of how the different metal, wood, water, fire, earth restrictions work. If they followed Haig's direction to get through the barrier, they could avoid many dangerous traps. It would minimize their losses. "Haig, what's wrong?" Phelps looked a bit shaken. He was excited, indeed. "Have you checked it thoroughly? We will start now. It's not really clear. But we have to move now. Something has changed." Looking at the toxic air curtain, Haig said, "Those people left the barrier 1 hour ago. If they are not going to ambush us, they must have some new plan. We can't linger here anymore." "What change?" asked MIA. "Perhaps they are heading to my ice territory or Harson's territory. Once we get into that forest area, we will know where they're heading. It's troublesome. The center is about to unseal. We don't have much time. We must attack them quickly." While talking, Haig walked to the toxic gas area. He had proposed and planned this operation on the ancient continent. He wouldn't allow any mistake, so he had to go there personally. The water-like, thick toxic air started to dilute when he walked over there. A flame swayed and changed its color above Haig's head, which was burning a large amount of toxic gas. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion arose and shook the entire swamp. "Get in, all of you," Haig hissed. "Follow me and don't stay too far." Then, he jumped through the barrier. Chapter 1145, White Bone Refining Blood Ghost Grave. Chapter 1145, White Bone Refining Blood Ghost Grave. Haig put his feet on the death trap prepared by Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and Wu Feng. It was the least dangerous area because Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others had used the good stuff they had before, which made Mia's team pay a deadly price. They didn't have many lethal weapons to use after that. Haig steadied his body in this area. While his thoughts were changing, a silver metal ball emerged in his palm. When it fell on the ground, spikes jutted out, making it a metal hedgehog with sharp thorns and spinning in front of him. Boom! 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 Gold bolts of lightning shot out rapidly. Sound waves exploded ear-splittingly. The earth shook as if there were dragons moving underground, releasing terrible tremors and dashing towards Haig. Swoosh! Haig's clothes exploded. Silver-scaled armor arose on his skin. Fierce spikes jutted out of his body. Instantly, he had transformed into his god-undying body. In this so-called perfect fighting form, Haig's eyes were astonishingly placid. Each silver scale of his armor generated a furious energy fluctuation and made him look like a human volcano with the sea of fire around him. Boom! 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 With Haig as the core, all the weak restrictions exploded. The fierce energy was triggered and it burst off with echoes. Within that short moment, this entire area fell into an earth-shaking tremor. The earth looked like it received the rage of fire from heaven. Everything was burned, charred, and even the ground was cracked and black under the scorching heat. The brutal features and intensity of this fire had surpassed Shi Yang's heaven flame. It was the powerful performance of the flaming origin that had been fused to a high level. A beam of cold, dark light flashed in the corner of his eye. An extremely cold aura emitted and filled the area with white fog. The world of flaming hell changed rapidly. It was frozen and it created many icicles. The flaming hell turned into a world of ice while Haig changed his thoughts. He had alternated the boiling condition and the icy condition in just a thought. Everything was done smoothly. When MIA, Phelps, and the God Warriors arrived, they were bewildered and scared as they looked at the world of ice. Hey! Aren't we going to the forest area? Did we make the wrong turn to the world of ice? Asked a warrior in astonishment. The others had reacted like him. They looked baffled as they didn't understand. Mia's bold brows furrowed. She shouted and pointed at the area ahead of them. You fool! Why didn't you look further ahead? Her finger pointed to the area afar where people were surprised to see the endless forest with countless woods. Right after that, they understood. They all turned to look at Haig and they looked at him with fear. They became vigilant as they knew how strong he was. Indeed, they had left to go to Harson. Haig sent his soul consciousness to check around as soon as he entered the forest. He had located Audrey's spot immediately. They're 1 or 2 days away from us. We must move quickly, and you must notify Harson and tell him to hide. Don't let the others swallow him. MIA changed her countenance. She hurried to take out the sound stone and shouted at it, Harson, be careful. The fish from the 2 territories are gathering and heading to you. You should leave immediately. Do not engage in the fight with them directly. They are really strong. Oh, the sound stone sent her an impatient voice and then nothing else. Harson, Harson, are you there? MIA grabbed and shouted at her sound stone, her face grimaced. However, the sound stone didn't react and its glow was dimming. Damn it, cursed MIA. We're going there right now. Haig bellowed. That lunatic has mental diseases. I'm afraid that he will act rashly. The shoreless sea territory. There were many logs of wood floating in the sea, each carrying some members of the Charteris family. Sitting neatly on the log that led this fleet was Harson, the skeletal ghost-like leader. His eyes were bloodshot like the most furious, bloodthirsty beast. The tree trunks floated and moved like arrows. Shortly after, they had arrived at a massive island. This island looked like it was situated on one end of the sea and was inside a thick fog. The dense fog covered even the horizon and blocked the view. The wood logs stopped by the shore of the island. Harson brought the thugs of his Charteris family and walked to the other side of the island where the fog was the thickest. The other side of this area seemed to be a whole new world. The other side was the forest territory. This island is the main port to enter the center. We will wait here for them to come to play with us. Harson's ruthless eyes scanned the fog. He suddenly grinned fiendishly. Well, those low creatures are so naive. They want to kill me. Ha ha. I think we will have fun with them a little bit. Young master, do you want to set something up? Asked a warrior who had a lot of bloodstains on his face as he licked his lips. Blunt Wu, tell me what to do to give them a surprise. Harson smiled sinisterly. White bone refining blood ghost grave. The Charteris family's warrior called Blunt Wu grinned fiendishly. The other members of the Charteris family had their eyes brighten. Their faces expressed their desires like wild beasts that caught the scent of blood. They nodded to him excitedly. All right. It's the white bone refining blood ghost grave then. Harson laughed. Each member of the Charteris scattered and stood in their precise positions. Terrifyingly evil aura gushed out from them. Blunt Wu shouted ear-piercingly while one of his hands tore his own belly as he tried to find for something in there. He took out a sharp, bloody piece of bone that looked like a dagger from his abdomen. Apparently, it felt so painful that he winced and screeched. However, his eyes looked manic. The same thing happened to the other members of the Charteris family. Each of them had torn their own abdomen, searching and slowly pulling out pieces of blood-dripping bones. The thick scent of blood filled the entire space. The whole place was dyed red and a stinky smell shot up into the sky. Each member of the Charteris family had taken a blood-dripping bone out of their bodies and planted it in the ground in front of them. When they did that, the sounds of screeching, crying, and wailing arose. Cold gusts of wind slapped their faces and raised people's hair. Dripping blood. Hassan laughed crazily, spurting blood from his mouth, which then sprayed on the bones planted in the ground. After that, a thick sea of blood arose above their heads. From a far distance, the blood of sea above the white bone refining blood ghost grave created by Hassan and his fellows looked somehow similar to the blood soul sea that Shi Yang had used his power Upanishad to create. It also had evil, wicked energy fluctuations that could affect people's minds and sink their soul altars. Hassan's team was still doing something. Their god bodies slowly disappeared. From a bird's view, it was just a sea of blood where they could see a gloomy grave made of white bones in the middle of the sea waves. However, they couldn't see Hassan or the other members of the Charteris family. They seemed to become one with their white bone refining blood ghost grave. A brutal, bloodthirsty aura slowly generated from the blood sea. It seemed to have an evil power that could condense murderous aura from outer space. Wisps of strange aura gathered from underground, the sea, and even the horizon. It seemed like the white bone refining blood ghost grave was attracting and collecting the last beam of the grudging aura of creatures that had died in the ancient continent for years. Those wisps of resentful aura could increase the power of that wicked formation. More terrifyingly, while the white bone refining blood ghost grave was gathering more energy, it had also distorted the earth and heaven energy and covered the entire sky that even the soul consciousness couldn't see through. This place. Kang Yun wiped the sweat on his forehead and pointed at the steamy area in front of them. He looked exhausted though. It was a vast river and they couldn't see the other riverbank. On their side, it was the forest. The steam hovered and separated the two sides, so they didn't know where the other riverbank was. The thick vapor was a natural barrier that divided the vast river into two parts, the forest part and the ocean part. You should show us how you crossed that river. Audrey nodded and urged him in a cold voice. Kang Yun stopped by the river. Audrey had released her soul consciousness to sense that he had then crossed the steamy barrier to explore. She didn't see anything strange, so she wasn't really worried. Kang Yun had also sensed quietly. He didn't find anything strange, either. However, he was cautious as he spoke. You guys should be careful. Hassan is a lunatic and he isn't weaker than Haig. Although he's restricted in the ancient continent, his lethality isn't less than Haig's. This man has a mental problem. He was born bloodthirsty. We can't treat him like a normal person. And his troopers are all madmen. When they feel that the situation doesn't favor them, they won't hesitate to make everyone die altogether. They can kill themselves to kill the enemies too without a bit of hesitation. Kang Yun was still fearful. In this vast area of sea, he had witnessed how crazy and brutal Hassan's subordinates were. One time, a warrior of Hassan's troop was surrounded by 3 warriors at the same realm. He was hurt, but at the critical moment, he committed suicide, bursting off the 3 warriors who were closest to him. And, his soul ran away and he returned to Hassan. Later on, he could have a new body and recovered. Each warrior under Hassan's command wasn't afraid of death. They listened to Hassan like the most religious disciples. They could kill themselves for Hassan. This kind of extreme madmen was the toughest to deal with. That would give anyone a terrible headache. Guys, be careful. Hassan is a maniac. Never underestimate him. Audrey nodded. She knew how dangerous Hassan was. She agreed with Kang Yun's reminder. I don't know why, but I feel like something is wrong. Shi Yang frowned as he had an extremely insecure feeling. He felt distracted. His acupuncture points couldn't help but vibrate, which confused him. There was a similar energy fluctuation hiding somewhere that made his acupuncture points resonate. Chapter 1146, Trust. Chapter 1146, Trust. Deep in the steamy area that led to the other territory, although Shi Yang didn't release his soul consciousness to sense, he still felt something wrong. Squinting, he focused on sensing. Vaguely, he found the vibe coming through the place of thick steam to resonate his acupuncture points. The negative energy inside his acupuncture points started to spin and become restless. They seemed to want to jump out of his body and escape his control. This feeling annoyed him a lot. He instinctively felt that something dangerous was hiding behind the barrier. Kang Yun, Cecilia, and Shong Yingyu were surprised when they heard him. They turned to look at him, their eyes asking. As Mo Fu and Wu Feng knew that Shi Yang could see the commotions of earth and heaven here, they didn't dare to act rashly. They frowned and looked at him as they expected him to give more details. What's wrong? Audrey's bold brows furrowed, a mocking gleam sparkling in her eyes. My soul consciousness isn't shackled here. I can send it over there and check. I can see the situation behind the steamy area. When I asked Kang Yun to break the barrier, I've checked it. Nothing is strange there. Kid, don't try to impress people by making things up. Fuller shouted. Fuller was a dark spirit warrior, an expert from the high-level star area. In the territory of the vast forest, Fuller used to be a leader of the warriors from different star areas. He had led them to fight against Yu Jia. Before Audrey appeared, he was the leader of this territory. However, during the battle with Yu Jia, Fuller had fallen into the lower hand. Yu Jia had hunted him down fiercely, until Audrey appeared all of a sudden. When Fuller's team was so helter-skelter, Audrey appeared and brought with her 4 members of the Imperial Dark Tribe. After one operation, she had led them to overturn the situation. After all, she had led them to eliminate Yu Jia's team. After that battle, Audrey had won people's trust and respect. Fuller wasn't an exception. He had given up his leadership position and listened to Audrey. Perhaps, because Fuller liked Audrey, he had maintained and reminded people of her position everywhere. Seeing Shi Yang dare to question Audrey's presumption, Fuller jumped out and looked at Shi Yang with a dark and harsh face. Can you see what is happening behind that barrier? Shi Yang shook his head. Then don't talk nonsense. Fuller snorted, his eyes raking through the others. During the past 3 years, we've been under Audrey's leadership to fight Yu Jia. It has been 3 years and Audrey has never made a wrong assumption. Every time, she's precisely correct. The warriors who had followed Audrey nodded, their face respectful and admiring. Apparently, within 3 years after Audrey had shown up, she had used her special abilities to earn trust from all of her warriors. No one would doubt her even once. If she wouldn't make a mistake. Shi Yang was the one to be blamed then. Fatty Kang Yun frowned. He looked at Shi Yang strangely. Just like Audrey, he could see the life energy fluctuation behind the barrier. When he left this area to go to the forest territory, he had checked once and right when he arrived here, he had checked it again. The situation hadn't changed a bit. Thus, Kang Yun had also doubted Shi Yang, who could be startled because of something trivial. He didn't consider Shi Yang's words. Shuo Jiao, Mo Fu, and Wu Feng heard Audrey, Kang Yun, and Fuller discussing that there wouldn't be anything dangerous behind the barrier. They finally eased their restless minds. They thought that Audrey wasn't bound by the continent and she could see the change of earth and heaven energy too. Thus, Audrey could see what Shi Yang could see. Moreover, since Shi Yang didn't tell them the details, they were more inclined to believe Audrey more. Open the barrier. Audrey didn't mind Shi Yang anymore. She turned to Kang Yun and ordered. Kang Yun shot Shi Yang a look. He didn't take action but asked, "Are you sure there is something wrong?" Shi Yang shook his head begrudgingly, "Just my premonition." Then it's hard to convince the others. Kang Yun felt sorry. Right after that, he agilely dashed away. His stout body moved swiftly like a feather as he drilled into the white steam. Kang Yun's god body disappeared into the steam. No one could see where he was heading. However, they all felt the sharp energy shockwaves rising deeply inside the mist. It seemed like the barrier was pierced through directly. No one knew what Kang Yun had done. However, they were all vigilant as now they knew that this little fatty wasn't an ordinary warrior. Shi Yang. Cecilia let out a slight call. Just like Shong Yingyu, she was standing by Shi Yang. They didn't move even though the others had already taken action. Right at this moment, Audrey, Fuller, and the other warriors had approached the steamy area. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Jiao Shan, and Shuo Jiao knitted their brows, throwing Shi Yang a glance before deciding to follow Audrey. They didn't want to group with Shi Yang and the 2 women. Because Audrey had just told them that Haig, Phelps, and MIA had entered the forest already. They were moving really fast to chase after them. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others were afraid that if they lingered, Haig, Phelps, and MIA would hunt them down shortly after. And in their thoughts, They assumed that Audrey was a level higher than Shi Yang in terms of sensing life energy fluctuation. Since Audrey was the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe and the Imperial Dark Tribe was one of the Great Four creatures, a truly strong race that could stand against the God Clan, they obviously thought that only Audrey could bring them hope. After they had joined Audrey's team, Shi Yang's weight in their eyes was reduced drastically. "You trust me?" Shi Yang grinned. He wasn't enraged at all. He looked at Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. He seemed to be in a good mood. "I used to fight shoulder by shoulder with you. I know how strong you are. Of course, I'm not as shallow as Mo Fu's group." Cecilia smiled charmingly. "You won't shoot the arrow aimlessly." Shang Yingyu's voice was cold and clear. However, what she said warmed Shi Yang up. "Audrey is so self-righteous. It's not true that she's right in everything. Although the time you and I are together isn't long, you have never failed me." Shi Yang chuckled. "What did you feel after all?" Cecilia put on a stern visage. She didn't even lower her voice and just screamed. Because at this moment, Audrey, Fuller, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others had followed Kang Yun to the other side of the barrier. They disappeared one after another. Shortly after, there was no one left behind. "Shi Yang, come here." Kang Yun was the last one staying by the barrier. He shouted through the thick mist. "You should get there first. Don't worry that I couldn't get through the barrier afterward. I can open it later." Shi Yang frowned and pitched his voice. "Okay. Hurry then." Kang Yun couldn't see Shi Yang, so he just replied and then disappeared. His aura also vanished. He must have gone to another territory. "I'm sorry I can't tell you the details now." Shi Yang frowned and spoke to Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. "If you believe me, don't hurry to get there. Wait here for a while. When I'm sure that nothing strange is there, I will bring you in all together." "I trust you anyway." Cecilia smiled. "I still want to count on you when we get into the center. Of course, I will advance or step back with you." Shang Yingyu was franker. "I believe in my father's keen eyes. If he stole the guiding fruit from my brother to give it to you, I'm sure he knew that you have something strange. My father has never wronged anybody. Although I don't know what you have, I'm sure you're not ordinary." It was rare for Shang Yingyu to talk this much. Shi Yang smiled, explained nothing to the two women. He sat down cross-legged and released his co-soul to sense. Haig, Phelps, and MIA were dashing toward them. Within 1 day and 1 night, they were going to reach this area. It wasn't a long time, but it was enough for him to stay here and check the situation. After verifying Haig's direction, Shi Yang's soul consciousness condensed into one flow and slowly entered the thick steam above the water. He carefully observed and tried to know if his premonition was true. Shi Yang discolored in fright. In that short moment, he stood up, his face stern. "I wasn't wrong." Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were astounded. They screamed, "What's happened? You two follow me. Remember to never leave my sides." Shi Yang shouted resolutely and told the women. "You guys hold my hands, so you'll be all right." Cecilia and Shang Yingyu studied him. Seeing him solemn, they hesitated for a while before raising their jade-like hands and clutching his sides. They leaned on him. A sharp flow of space energy arose. Shi Yang brought the two women and tore the barrier like a sharp weapon that could break anything. They landed on the new territory and steadied themselves on a big island. "Oh, what's going on?" Cecilia and Shang Yingyu screamed, their faces baffled as they looked at the area in front of them. In front of them was a blood sea with murderous, wicked aura shooting up into the sky. Situated in the center of the bobbing blood sea was a bone-dripping white bone gravestone. It looked so evil and peculiar, and it released waves of crazy, malignant energy. Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, Fuller, Audrey, and the others were swaying in the thick sea of blood. They were fighting against each other around the gravestone. The thick scent of blood filled the entire place. Besides Audrey and Kang Yun, who were nervous but managed to stay relatively calm, the others were fighting against each other. Their eyes reflected their bloodthirsty desire. Evidently, they would lose their mind and fall into bedevilment. Audrey and Kang Yun looked calm, but they were actually attacking the gravestone as they knew that it was the key of this formation. They wanted to break that stone as soon as possible. However, whenever they tried to approach the gravestone, Mo Fu, Sho Jiao, Wu Feng, and the others would dash towards them from everywhere and risk their lives to stop them. The two couldn't do anything to break the stone. The thick blood sea, the bobbing gravestone. All were strange, but they didn't see the enemies. The situation was developed at the most dangerous point. Chapter 1147, Turn Earth and Heaven Around. Chapter 1147, Turn Earth and Heaven Around. What's going on? My. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were frightened. They gradually paled and felt dispirited. They couldn't accept it. I told you that something is wrong. Shi Yang's face was dark and heavy as he sighed. Cecilia's and Shang Yingyu's jade hands clutched onto Shi Yang's arms while he felt so chilled inwardly, his eyes flaring up strange light. The blood sea with the soul energy that could affect people's minds was the unique feature of the blood soul sea, an ability of his death power Upanishad. Why did it appear here? Who has set this up? Down there. Something is down there. Cecilia cried. Shi Yang focused while terrifying divine light shot out from his eyes, drilling like a dazzling dagger through the blood sea. Under the blood sea, Shi Yang could see bloody shadows moving swiftly as if they were part of the blood sea. If he didn't watch clearly, he wouldn't be able to spot them. Those bloody shadows flew everywhere in the blood sea and discreetly took action. They didn't hurry to kill the warriors who had gone mad. In their eyes, those warriors weren't threats. As long as they were still fighting each other, that bunch of insane warriors would kill each other eventually. Anyway, those bloody shadows were approaching Audrey and Kang Yun. They wanted to stop the two from breaking the gravestone in the middle of the blood sea. That gravestone was the eye of the formation. Once it was broken, the formation would dissolve immediately. Kang Yun and Audrey grimaced. Even though the gravestone was right there, it was like it had been planted in the horizon they couldn't reach. In the critical moment, they were often stopped by the warriors from their own side. Audrey and Kang Yun were so enraged. They suddenly recalled what Shi Yang had reminded them. Audrey and Kang Yun were regretting in the blood sea. However, as their vision was blocked, they couldn't see Shi Yang standing out there. They only had that white bone gravestone in their eyes. They had to break it at any cost. The two of them aren't affected, but it seems like they have no way to dissolve this blood sea. If it's going this way, those people will fight each other until death. As long as that strange blood sea is here, no one can escape. Cecilia was so worried. Shi Yang, do you have any solution? Shang Yingyu gazed at him and shouted, if they are all over, we will be killed too. No doubt. Without them, we can't resist the God clan. I know. I'm thinking, frowned Shi Yang. He was sensing the powerful features of this evil formation. Using the soul consciousness to check, he figured out that it wasn't the blood soul sea. That formation wasn't urged by the power of death. It was a wicked and evil bloody sacrificial ritual that had gathered the remnant of evils in earth and heaven. It wasn't the real blood soul sea, but it had some features of the blood soul sea. As his thoughts changed, Shi Yang vaguely guessed that this sinister formation was somehow a simulation of the blood soul sea from the death power Upanishad of the bloodthirstis bloodline. However, it was just 40% or 50% similar. Getting sober, Shi Yang hissed, you guys stay here. I'm going there. Shi Yang didn't wait for Cecilia or Shang Yingyu to react. He jumped directly into the thick blood sea. As soon as his body immersed in the blood sea, the entire world changed. There was no sky or ground in his eyes but the endless red hue of blood. He seemed to be shrouded by the blood sea. Blood dyed his entire body red. He didn't see Cecilia and Shang Yingyu anymore. However, he could see Kang Yun and Audrey now. Just like him, Kang Yun and Audrey were so enraged and restless. They were trying to approach the gravestone in the middle of the sea. Standing by Kang Yun and Audrey were Fuller, Mo Fu, and Jiao Shan who were attacking the two. And Shi Yang could see blood shadows moving under Kang Yun and Audrey, holding them like sticky, muddy puddles. They couldn't get close to the gravestone. When he appeared in the blood sea, he immediately felt 3 ghostly bloody shadows surrounding him. They didn't hurry to attack him directly but they were gathering the energy of this area. Shortly after, A flow of energy that could madden the soul altar shot over from the white-bone gravestone. A soul energy fluctuation that was full of bloodthirsty, insane, and destructive desires intruded his sea of consciousness, attempting to take control of his body. Shi Yang's thoughts flickered. The poison-dipped cold bead emitted the cold energy that neutralized the energy that could disorder the mind. After a while, his eyes became bloodshot and dull as he began to pretend that his mind occupied. He immediately flew to Kang Yun and Audrey. When the bloody shadows surrounding him saw him losing control and going to attack Kang Yun and Audrey, they didn't watch him anymore. He made his way to Kang Yun and Audrey easily. Just like Mo Fu, Wu Feng, he began to attack them too. He didn't look different from the warriors who had their minds occupied. Even Kang Yun and Audrey thought that he was puzzled and had lost his mind. Damn! Audrey cursed. She looked at Shi Yang indignantly. She thought if he knew it was dangerous, why did he jump in? Kang Yun frowned, his fat face tangling up. He was hesitating and didn't know what to do in this case. Help me hold the others for a while. I will make my way to that gravestone. Suddenly, a soul message arose in Kang Yun's and Audrey's heads. Kang Yun and Audrey were shaken. Kang Yun had a strange light in his eyes. He paused for just 1 second before he had reacted and took action. He stormed towards Shi Yang, gritted his teeth, and attacked Shi Yang. His acting wasn't less interesting than Shi Yang. Quite the contrary, Audrey's beautiful eyes were bewildered. She had so many doubts. She didn't know why Shi Yang wasn't affected and he could maintain his sound mind. Apparently, her reaction was much slower than Kang Yun's. When she woke up from her thought, she saw that Kang Yun and Shi Yang were fighting furiously like a fire. Audrey cursed Kang Yun and Shi Yang under her breath that they were two cunning, excellent actors. In fact, they acted really well. However, she could react eventually. She pretended to know nothing. Following Kang Yun, she started to attack Mo Fu's team while noticing Shi Yang and waiting for his signal. As the bloody shadows deemed that Shi Yang had lost his mind, they didn't do anything to shoo him away when he drew near to the gravestone. They were busy keeping their eyes on Audrey and Kang Yun. Now, all of a sudden, Shi Yang's voice arose in Audrey's and Kang Yun's head like a thunderclap. Audrey and Kang Yun abruptly took action and drew all attacks of the others on them. At the same time, Shi Yang, who was so close to the gravestone and entangled with Audrey and Kang Yun, immediately turned around. Starlight bloomed on his body like a galaxy falling from the sky and directly walloped the white-boned gravestone. Swoosh! A dazzling halo of sunlight burst out of Shi Yang's ethereal extent with his tremendous god power. With the savage, burning yang energy, it created an intense sunlight and heat pounding on the gravestone like a real sun. Boom! 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 The grumbling sounds arose together with the noises of bones cracking from the gravestone. It was taken down immediately. Pieces of bone rolled and fell. Anyway, there wasn't a single real bone exploded or smashed. The pieces of bone that had detached from the gravestone turned into bloodlight and shot everywhere. The thick blood sea vanished. The soul energy that could distort people's hearts perished at that moment. The warriors who had their minds occupied stopped attacking each other. The wild, crazy gleam in their eyes disappeared. Audrey and Kang Yun weren't attacked anymore. They now gazed at the collapsed gravestone with cold, dark looks. A skeletal young man of the god clan sat at the spot where the gravestone was just a moment ago. Blood dripped from his body. One of his knees touched the ground as he was holding a bone and trying to put it back into his abdomen. His manic, resentful eyes fixed on Shi Yang. This kind of chilling to the bone hatred was like a venomous snake slithering into Shi Yang's heart. The gravestone of the white bone refining blood ghost grave was Harson himself. When the gravestone collapsed, he also got hit severely. The bone that he had used to create the blood was almost broken, which made him hated Shi Yang to the bone. As Shi Yang appeared, he had broken Harson's plan. Now, he couldn't kill Audrey or Kang Yun and he was in a dangerous situation. One blink and he was in heaven. Another blink and he had already fallen in hell. All was because of the grumbling impact from that damn sun. The bloody shadows slowly emerged. The blood hue and real dripping blood on their bodies disappeared and revealed their true bodies. They were Harson's troop, the members of the Charteris family. Those Charteris disciples looked savage and insane. They all had resentful eyes that gazed at Shi Yang. Just like Hassan, they hated Shi Yang to their bones. That man had pretended to be occupied to approach the gravestone. All of a sudden, he struck a lightning-fast attack, which cracked the tombstone and shook them hard. Their bodies also got hurt. Shi Yang alone had smashed their plan. It was a pain that they could hardly accept. Mo Fu, Jiao Shan, Wu Feng, Shuo Jiao got their sane minds back. Looking at the situation here, their faces grimaced. All of them had their minds occupied. It was unforgivable. Those warriors put on brutal and dark countenances, glancing at Hassan and his warriors. They panted and waited for Audrey's order. Outside the formation, Cecilia and Shang Yingyu had a strange light flare in their eyes. They looked at Shi Yang as a thought arose in their mind. They couldn't trust anybody here but Shi Yang. He alone had overturned earth and heaven and changed the entire situation of their battle. He had done what Kang Yun and Audrey couldn't. In their hearts, only Shi Yang was eligible to be the leader. Audrey and Kang Yun were just his background. They couldn't be the key leaders. What are you waiting for? Kill them. Shi Yang broke the silence and shouted. Aren't we here to kill the Charteris family's warriors? Did you forget your current humiliation? His words had provoked the volcano in Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Fuller's head. They roared and stormed over the others. Chapter 1148, Seize Power. Chapter 1148, Seize Power. Earth-shaking explosions arose from the center of the vast island. It was like the island had to bear a bombarding from meteors. Massive holes appeared. Pieces of land settled deep into the ground. Mo Fu urged his soul altar. An earth-yellow ethereal extent arose above his head. Grey dust and sand rose up, creating savage beasts that jumped out of his ethereal extent. With the power of earth, they became real and they wildly assaulted the Charteris family's warriors. Wu Feng, Fuller, Shuo Jiao, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai were mobilizing their power Upanishad like the erupting volcanoes. The freezing, icy world of ethereal extent appeared. Another world of fire in hell glowed dazzlingly. Lightning bolts that could strike the entire sky emerged. All the warriors released their ethereal extent, their willpower that could overturn the whole sky. Together, they pressed down and covered the Charteris family's members. As Wu Feng, Fuller, and the others had control of their bodies back, they started to pour their flames of anger on the Charteris family's warriors. They were all ruthless and insane. Instantly, strong gusts raked through the island, rolling the sand and rocks. Fire rose high in the sky. Lightning bolts rampaged. It looked exactly like what would be the scene of Doomsday. Shi Yang changed his visage slightly as he looked at the earth-shattering fight. Hearing the violent explosions reverberating, he immediately urged his energy. Beams of starlight that looked like hair braids weaved with each other, creating a magnificent set of starlight armor and shrouding Shi Yang's god body. He looked like he was bathing in the starry night as his entire body looked transparent and twinkled, releasing the marvelous halo of starlight. Lightning strikes, flames, and gusts of wind were wreaking havoc. However, they were neutralized when they came in contact with his marvelous starlight armor. Nothing could create a scratch on his body. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu slowly moved, standing on his right and left sides. One looked so gently pure while the other was so sexy. They were like two pretty flowers that made people jealous of Shi Yang's beautiful encounter. They were surprised, indeed. Hassan had shot him a malicious look. However, he wasn't free to care about Shi Yang as Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Fuller was attacking him at this moment. He looked helter-skelter indeed. Besides Kang Yun, Audrey, and Shi Yang's group of three, the other had joined the fierce battle as they wanted to vent out their anger by assaulting the Charteris family's warriors. The flame of war didn't burn only this section. It was spreading to the entire island. Shadows flashed and disappeared into the sky like lightning. In just a blink of an eye, they could travel 10 miles away. The warriors had urged their powers to perform the marvelous abilities of earth and heaven. They could see the lightning dragon, the sea of fire, or the world of ice. However, the terrible damages they left on this island weren't very different. This island was about to break. Explosions reverberated continually. Audrey's cold eyes moved. Her line of sight raked through the area, and then she fixed her eyes on Shiyang as she asked, "Why weren't you affected by that wicked formation?" Kang Yun's innocent, fat face beamed as he squinted his eyes. However, he didn't ask anything. He knew that Shiyang was a member of the immortal demon clan who had fused with the origin. Thus, Kang Yun believed that Shiyang wasn't ordinary, and he wasn't astonished that Shiyang wasn't affected by the evil formation. Of course, Audrey didn't know this. Being the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe, her innate endowment was the most outstanding among her kind. She understood the essence of cultivating the soul altar. She was tough as she had endured different wicked pieces of training. That was how she wasn't affected in that bloody formation. In her eyes, Kang Yun and Shiyang were ordinary warriors, so they wouldn't have the ability to protect their soul altars like she did. Thus, she knew that Kang Yun and Shiyang were hiding something from her. She wanted to know that. "I don't know, either." Under Audrey and Kang Yun's gazing, Shiyang just shrugged and shook his head. Audrey's phoenix eyes narrowed to cold, dangerous slits. She coldly glanced at him and released the prying energy to break into his soul altar. Bang! It felt like when you hit a leather drum. Audrey's soul consciousness was shaken as she bounced back from Shiyang's head. "Under the given circumstances that you're not allowed, please don't touch my soul altar. Of course, if you want to do soul intercourse, it's another story." Shiyang grinned. Cecilia and Sheng Yingyu were so surprised. They looked strange, their eyes discreetly observing Audrey as if they were somehow amused. Kang Yun grinned. He also shot Audrey an odd look and then at Shiyang with a little, sneaky ambiguous smile. The arrogant and proud Audrey's exquisite face stiff. It seemed like she had never experienced the same teasing from her male friends before. For the time being, her beautiful eyes looked puzzled. She pulled herself together after a long moment, wearing a very strange countenance. "Are you teasing me?" she asked to check if it was true. "Ah no," Shiyang felt funny as he shook his head. "I want to make it clear that I don't like my soul altar being touched. Unless a woman wants to do soul intercourse with me, I will consider carefully." "Lowly little human brat. You dare to talk so vulgarly to me. I doubt that you want to live anymore." Magically, Audrey's voice was calmer than she had ever been before. Her beautiful eyes turned into slits like icicles that gazed at Shiyang. "Then," she said faintly, "wait until we've finished Harson and killed all the members of the Charteris here. Then, we'll talk." "Nah, you guys. Don't be like that. It's our priority to deal with the God Clan. After that, you can play however you want." Kang Yun tried to ease the tension. Too bad for him, Audrey didn't give him face. She snorted arrogantly and lifted her face up. She didn't even bat an eye at him. Shiyang shrugged, talking as if nothing mattered to him. "Well, help yourself. I've yielded to you and have been willing to listen to your orders. It's because I believe you can guide people on the right track. But, it turns out that it's not like that. You do make mistakes. This time, your mistake has almost killed all of our warriors. I did remind you, but you didn't listen." Kang Yun frowned and thoughts rolled in his head. His bead-like eyes brightened as he suddenly got something. Shiyang had to take this chance to seize power. Before this event, Fuller and the others had deemed that Audrey was the best choice and that she could lead them to resist the God Clan and claim the final victory. It was because Audrey had never made a mistake before. But it was different now. If Shiyang hadn't smashed the gravestone, Fuller, Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and everybody else would have been killed by the Charteris family's warriors. None of them could have escaped. Especially since Shiyang had told them that something was wrong before they got here, Audrey couldn't sense the abnormality or buy what he told her. With all of these and the support from Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, Cecilia, and Kang Yun himself, it would be possible for Shiyang to take control. If he could defeat Audrey, it meant that he was stronger than Audrey. And as he could sense the changes of the earth and heaven energy, he would have a bigger chance. Kang Yun was discreetly excited. He wanted to support Shiyang. He knew that if Shiyang could become the leader of this group, it would be much easier for them. No one could control them, so they would be free to do many things. Big Mouth, though. Audrey's beautiful eyes were cold. Soul energy emitted from her more fiercely. She coldly looked at Shi Yang as if she was gathering energy. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Fuller, and the others were chasing the warriors of the Charteris family around the island. Since they were doubled in number, they had a significant advantage. The warriors of the Charteris family were struggling crazily. However, their room was being narrowed. If nothing unexpected happened, Mo Fu, Wu Feng's team would win in the end. They could clear the warriors of the Charteris family quickly. While they were fighting, Shi Yang and Audrey didn't exchange a word. The atmosphere around them was tense and stiff, as if they would burst out fighting against each other in any minute. As Kang Yun wished Shi Yang to successfully seize power, he didn't advise the two but pushed it further. He smiled, his eyes squinting. I think it's not a bad idea to make Shi Yang the leader. Without him, I'm afraid that all of us would have suffered. His voice was like a thunderclap that was sent around the island. Everybody could hear him clearly. Cecilia and Sheng Ying stood on his left and right. Of course, they supported him. They nodded continually upon hearing Kang Yun. Audrey's eyes were as cold as ice. Her perfectly proportioned body shivered. Obviously, she was enraged. You and I will compete once, Shi Yang appraised Kang Yun for understanding him tacitly. He rose his voice, you and I will take action to kill the members of the Charteris family. Let's see who can kill more. The loser will give up the leader position and listen to the winner. Do you dare to play with me? Every warrior on the island could hear him. Mo Fu, Fuller, Sho Jiao, and Wu Feng were astounded. Many warriors who had followed Audrey earlier just listened. No one opened their mouths to question or object him. If Shi Yang had challenged Audrey like that earlier, her followers would have swarmed him with insults and attacks. However, since Audrey had just made a fatal mistake and Shi Yang had saved them from the wicked formation, they suddenly recognized that Audrey couldn't always be right and that she wasn't their only choice to be the leader. Shi Yang's appearance was also an available option. They wanted to see who is stronger. Good solution. Kang Yun shouted, I agree with this method. You guys don't need to fight against each other to reduce our powers. Creating a competition upon killing our enemies, whether you lose or win, you contribute to our team. I like it. I support it. We also support this idea. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, Jiao Hai, Jiao Shan, Sho Jiao, and the warriors coming with Shi Yang had woken up after Shi Yang had saved them one more time. They yelled in agreement. Fuller and the others remained silent. They just tried to attack the Charteris family's members more harshly. They wanted to circle those warriors like they were luring animals into cages. Okay, I agree. Audrey took a deep breath. She smiled coldly. Low creature, you don't know how high the sky is. Today, I will show you why the Imperial Dark Tribe is called one of the Great Four Creatures. Let's make this bet. Chapter 1149, It's the First One. Chapter 1149, It's the First One. In the vast woods, Haig, MIA, Phelps, and the warriors of the God Clan were dashing like lightning. God power that emitted from their bodies were rattling the woods as they were heading to the island where Hassan's team and Shi Yang's team were fighting at their maximum speed. Suddenly, the sound stone in Mia's sleeve sounded ear-piercingly. MIA paled, her finger fiddling the stone. She cursed out loud, Hassan is engaging in battle with them. Damn. Haig darkened his face, his countenance solemn. That lunatic. Phelps couldn't help but curse. We've noticed him and asked him to be careful. He didn't listen. If he contacts us now, there is only one possibility. He can't endure it anymore. Haig and MIA nodded in agreement. They knew Hassan well. Unless he was backed to the dead corner without any possible solution, with his stubborn head, he would never request for a rescue. This madman was really stubborn. If he called MIA, it meant that his team was besieged in a really perilous situation without a single chance to overturn. Otherwise, he would still make the last bet. He would never admit his failure. This man was always that brave and stubborn. We must go faster. At the critical moment, Haig was always terrifyingly placid. At our speed, I'm afraid that we can't help him on time. Okay, we should go faster. He looked at Phelps, MIA, and Peyton. Phelps, MIA, and Peyton all had secret treasures, and they had cultivated a unique technique of the God Clan that would boost their energy for a short time and create a tremendous explosive power. Okay. MIA, Phelps, Peyton, and the 3 other God warriors nodded, their face dark and solemn. In the next moment, flows of ruthless, savage auras gushed out from the bodies of the 7 warriors, including Haig. They had transformed into their undying god bodies that looked formidable. Energy shot out from them all along the way. With the furious energy, the 7 warriors turned into 7 sharp swords, flying close to the ground towards Harson's. Ancient trees along their way were burst off, their branches and leaves turning into powder and scattering away. On the misty island in the sea territory, Fuller, Mo Fu, Sho Jiao, and Wu Feng released their ethereal extent, circulating their powers Upanishad. They formed groups of 2 or 3 to attack the Charteris family's warriors. Kang Yun, Cecilia, and Shong Ying weren't idle anymore. They scattered and vaguely surrounded Harson in the center. Be careful with those lunatics. Kang Yun's voice sounded like a giant bronze bell that reached every corner of the island. Try your best not to engage in close combat with them. They will drag you to death altogether. No one dared to ignore Kang Yun's reminder. Because just a moment ago, 2 warriors under Audrey's command were killed altogether with a warrior of the Charteris family right before they could kill him. That madman had exploded his own soul altar and created a tornado that covered the other 2 immediately. After the shock waves ceased, of course, the Charteris family's warrior was gone, but he had taken with him the 2 warriors who had attacked him all the time. The manic disciples of the Charteris family didn't have consciousness or fear. If they found that the situation couldn't be saved anymore, they would try their last attempt to take a bite of your flesh or even bone before they died. They would never let you finish your deed with ease. Thus, without waiting for Kang Yun to stress it further, when they were fighting those lunatics, they were all cautious. Because of that, although they had fought for a long time, the Charista family had lost just 1 warrior, the one who had exploded himself. Since they didn't dare to approach the Charista warriors, the others still had room to resist. This situation had maintained until Shi Yang and Audrey joined the fight. Significant changes were made afterward. Shortly after Audrey had agreed on the competition with Shi Yang, she had set her eyes on a member of the Charteris family. She coldly commanded the others to leave that man and then urged her power. A soul magnetic field that could cover the entire island gushed out from Audrey's lean and graceful body. In that glimpse, people felt a strong vibe in their soul. They had to pull themselves together and calm down their soul to prevent it from flying out of the soul altar. They now hallucinated that Audrey had turned into a soul vortex that released a large magnetic field to draw all their soul in. When Audrey performed her strange power Upanishad, everybody's soul altars were affected. Their energy attacks, which used to be smooth, were halted and stagnant, preventing them from using their skills. In this area, there were only 2 warriors who weren't affected by Audrey's power. They were Shi Yang and Kang Yun. Only the 2 of them had strong soul altars that Audrey's soul magnetic field couldn't affect. Thus, their powers Upanishads weren't sluggish. The warrior of the Charteris family who had to bear Audrey's soul magnetic field was at 3rd sky of ethereal god realm. He cultivated wood power Upanishad. His soul was drawn out of his body, moving above his head. This man's soul was dim and grey, and it looked like a mossy, ancient tree was planted in his head. His soul didn't have any gleam of fear. Quite the contrary, it had a madly disordered soul energy fluctuation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Wood power of the 5 elements was urged. A terrifying commotion arose under Audrey's feet. A long, narrow climbing plant like an ivy with its branches slithered like snakes animatedly and wound around Audrey's graceful body. That plant then sprouted so many vines with teeth and started to bite and saw Audrey's beautiful thighs and delicate waist. The ancient grey tree soul of that Charteris warrior withered at a speed that the naked eye could observe. His vitality was drawn away rapidly. At the same time, the peculiar, evil vines coiling around Audrey were strengthened rapidly. They became tougher and more agile with vitality. It could be compared to the thickest armor, and it shrouded Audrey. At the same time, The toothy vines were still biting and tearing her body. It was another form of jade and rock shattering together. Each member of the Charteris family was that extreme. As long as they could kill the others, they could even destroy themselves to do that. They seemed to have no mental barrier. Audrey apparently had underestimated the craziness of the Charteris warriors. Being wound by the vines, she looked like a soft fruit growing in the center of a big tree. As the other's soul was withering, her body was squeezed and it made her look bony. However, no matter how hard the vines had tried to bite or cut her, they couldn't leave any wound on her body. People knew that the god body of the Imperial Dark Tribe warriors wasn't as strong as their soul altar. Evidently, Audrey was an exception. Her lean, soft body had an intimidating, surging energy, her snow-white skin and jade bones containing powerful tides of energy. Audrey swayed. Fire rings rolled down from her snow-white neck, turning bigger on the way. Just like hula hoops, the fire rings got bigger and slowly fell from her thighs to her ankles. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The ancient tree suddenly ignited. It wasn't the vines on her body, but the tree that jutted from the head of the Charteris warrior in front of her. That man's dim, grey soul smoked and then burned off. People could vaguely hear the shrieks and screech when his soul met death. Rings of fire expanded from her body. The vines with teeth that were squeezing her body were burned down like the snake bone. They fell off her body. She wiped the charred remains of those vines on her body in disgust. Lifting her head to look at Yang, she told him coldly, "That's the first one." Then, a cold light flared in her eyes. She flashed and disappeared shortly before reappearing in front of another Charteris warrior. She told Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai, who was fighting with him, "You guys stay away." Jiao Shan and Jiao Hai wore cold faces, but they didn't dare to say much. After nodding, they moved away and gave her the opponent. Kang Yun, Cecilia, Shong Yingyu, and the Wu brothers were surrounding Hassan, but they still had time to watch. Kang Yun, Cecilia, and Shong Yingyu shivered inwardly as they were worried about Yang. The terrifying deed that Audrey had just performed made them wary in fear. Finally, they knew that it wasn't only that the ancient continent didn't shackle her that made her the leader of this team. This woman had a peculiar and unpredictable power Upanishad. At the same time, the accumulated energy in her body was pure and abundant. Apparently, she didn't have the common weakness of Imperial Dark Tribe warriors, which was a fragile body. She had used her strength to get people's approval. Seeing her kill one enemy in a short moment, Kang Yun and the two women were anxious. They doubted themselves whether or not it was a good move to support Yang. They didn't think that Yang was strong enough. Because they could see that Yang was fighting a member of the Charteris family, his power seemed to be just equal. He couldn't even take the upper hand. He has just second sky of ethereal god realm. Maybe we've evaluated his competence too highly. Wrong move. Kang Yun, Cecilia, and Shong Yingyu sighed inwardly. Yang's opponent cultivated ice power Upanishad. This Charteris warrior had ice shrouding his entire body and even the ground under his feet was frosty. He was using his power Upanishad to create a favorable battlefield. Wherever he moved, the place then had glacier and snow that created a whole world of ice and snow. Sometimes, hidden arrows made of sharp metal energy would shot towards Yang. This man also cultivated metal power Upanishad. However, he hadn't mastered his powers Upanishad enough to combine the two. Still, he made some mistakes. However, his real competence was stronger than the man Audrey had killed. As he could use two powers Upanishads at the same time when fighting Yang, he didn't fall into a perilous situation. He had even licked his lips and grinned fiendishly with a cruel face. He wanted to kill Yang. His eyes changed. A savage, murderous aura burst out of his chest. A piece of bloody bone emerged with the evil energy fluctuation from his body as if it could erode people's soul. His eyes were so strange as he gazed at Yang. Shortly after, a beam of violent soul energy shot out of his eyes and entered Yang's soul altar. Yang was shaken, his face a little strange. Abruptly, divine light shot out radiantly from his eyes. What he was waiting for was this moment. Chapter 1150, The Bloody Bone has a new owner. Chapter 1150. The Bloody Bone has a new owner. Before Shi Yang had entered the island, he had sensed a strange energy that had stirred up his acupuncture points. It was the wicked formation that Hassan's team had created, White Bone Refining Blood Ghost Grave. He jumped into that evil formation and the familiar aura became more intense to him. The thick, pungent blood sea and the distorting soul attack were the unique abilities of the blood soul sea. The ghost grave built by the blood-dripping bones wasn't broken. Even a piece wasn't chipped off when his sunlight attacked it. The tenacious bones had surprised him a lot. After that moment, he confirmed that the bones that built the ghost grave weren't from the god body of Hassan's team. At Hassan's team's realm and power, their body could never create blood-dripping bones that were that hard. Each of those bloody bones had a murderous, malicious aura that could shoot up into the sky. They seemed to carry a terrifyingly brutal mood that could sink people's souls and then occupy their minds. Those bones belonged to someone much stronger. That person had to belong to the bloodthirstiest bloodline, someone cultivating death power Upanishad. His realm was likely extremely high and his body was almost unbreakable. He had developed his skeleton and filled it with the malignant energy of earth and heaven, which hadn't faded after so many years. Hassan and his 18 subordinates had bloody bones for each that they had to use their soul energy, blood, and chi to nurture. They used and condensed the brutal, murderous chi in their bodies to create the White Bone Refining Blood Ghost Grave with those bones as the keys. Boom! The bloody bone inside the opponent standing in front of Shi Yang released a negative, ruthless energy fluctuation, running directly into his brain and giving him bloody illusions. He saw the blood sea swarming over and sinking him in the warm, viscous blood. The strong smell of blood filled his nostrils. Islets of white bones emerged and gave him an evil, wicked impression. These illusions were what he had experienced that year when he sank his body in the blood pond for the first time he had descended to Grace Mainland. However, after so many years, he wasn't the man of that old day. The illusion of the blood pond couldn't hypnotize his mind. Quite the contrary. While his thoughts were flickering, his acupuncture points suddenly had a strong suction force. Bang! 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 Evil energy fluctuations arose from that warrior. A blood-dripping bone with a murderous aura shooting up into the sky tried to escape his body uncontrollably. The man discolored. He hastened to gather his power and spirit to control that bloody bone. However, right at this moment, a flow of negative energy that was 10 times more powerful than his swarmed over him like a real blood sea and intruded deep into his soul. His eyes went blank. He stood still as if he was confined by space power Upanishad. Swish! The bone that he had refined for years suddenly danced and stirred up his internal organs, creating bleeding holes in his body. The warrior looked blank as if he didn't feel pain. He was idle and didn't move an inch. He seemed to lose his soul to the hand of death. No one could notice that a beam of soul consciousness had broken into this man's soul altar when the blood sea swarmed over him. It swayed deep in his brain and took the secrets from his memory. A sealed, secure memory was taken away and it released the most mysterious, hidden horrible pieces of memory. Many years ago, when this man was still a warrior at King God Realm, one elder of the Charteris family had taken him to a hidden cave where he had to offer a wisp of his soul seal to Hassan, who was also a young man at that moment. After that, he had to vow to worship Hassan for the rest of his life. Together with him, there were 17 other teenagers sent to the cave. They all had to give Hassan a wisp of their soul that connected to Hassan's soul. It was an evil title deed. When Hassan's soul was destroyed, they would all be killed and they would follow him. Their deaths would come instantly. But if their souls perished, it didn't do anything to Hassan's soul. That man could still live safe and sound. Apparently, this wasn't a fair contract. After that, this group of 18 teenagers was each given a bloody bone. They heard that the bones belonged to a formidable expert with a tremendous evil aura. The Charteris family had studied for years to understand the mysteries and get the essence of it. Each of them received a bloody bone and planted it into their bodies. When the bloody bone got into their abdomen, each of them had to endure the most terrible pain in this world, which made them cry and screech for a long time. The fusion progress was so strenuous and painful. They had spent 8 years with a lot of precious materials to finish this bone fusion. Then, they were taught to use the white bone refining blood ghost grave, making tests for the evil power they got from the bones. Gradually, they became stronger and they were the most loyal henchmen of Harson. It felt like Shi Yang had just watched the experiences of that man's whole life. His soul consciousness tied that piece of memory and watched all things the man had experienced. Shi Yang finally confirmed his presumption. That year, when the 8 subordinates of Bloodthirsty were defeated in the battle against the God Clan, the Charteris family had tried their best to kill the warrior who cultivated death power Upanishad. Afterward, they had taken his bones and refined it with evil techniques before implanting them into the bodies of Harson's subordinates. The bones then helped them promote the most wicked secret formation that greatly assisted Harson in fighting. He knew what he wanted to know. Shi Yang's thoughts flickered and a cold aura overflowed his opponent's soul altar. It was the poison from the poison-dipped cold bead filling his soul altar and melting it down. His soul evaporated like mist and returned to earth and heaven. Crack, crack. The bone stirred inside his body and crushed him. All of a sudden, it flew out and fell towards Shi Yang. When he grabbed the bone, Shi Yang had a gleam of sadness in his eyes as he sighed. The owner of the bloody bone was an expert cultivating death power Upanishad to the top level. Although he had fallen for many years, his bones still had frightening powers with a terrible aura that could simulate the effects of the Blood Soul Sea. However, even though he was such a character, he was gone. Shi Yang felt so sorry for the bloodthirsty force. While he didn't notice, his soul altar spun. The death power Upanishad sent out a magical beam of energy that could trigger some resonance. Swish, swish. 2 blood lights flashed and flew towards him like blood lightning. They were the other 2 blood-dripping bones. Although the bodies of the Charteris warrior who had exploded himself and the one Audrey had killed were gone, the bloody bones remained. They were guided by the energy from Shi Yang's acupuncture points and they gathered in front of him. Even though these bones had been refined for years by the elders of the Charteris, they still had a deep, everlasting fixation. Because of this undying fixation, although Harson's 18 warriors had fused with them, they couldn't control the bones as much as they pleased. Through the years, the deep fixation had been imprinted in the bones so that they would never be able to wash it away. Cecilia, Shong Yingyu, Kang Yun also paid attention to Shi Yang while fighting Harson. They were so baffled. The fight between Shi Yang and his opponent was strange, indeed. It was obvious that their power was equal. However, they got the result of that battle quickly. They didn't see clearly what had happened over there. When they noticed the commotion, they found that Shi Yang's opponent had his soul perish and Shi Yang was taking the bone from that man's body. All they could see were the blood-dripping bone in Shi Yang's hand and 2 more floating in front of him. This scene was strange and evil. Even Kang Yun now felt a chill in his heart. Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, Wu Feng, and Jiao Shan were solemn as they watched Shi Yang draw his opponent's bone. They felt the hair on the back of their heads raising. In their eyes, Shi Yang was much more frightening than Audrey. No one recognized Harson with his terrified eyes. Watching Shi Yang from a distance, he was screaming in his head. No one understood the meaning of the bones Shi Yang was holding better than Harson. Each of those blood-dripping bones belonged to the skeleton of a brutal demon. The Charteris family had scraped those bones and soaked them in different kinds of evil blood to give them the unrivaled, ruthless power. Why were they in his hand? How did he take them out? Harson screamed in his head, his face distorting. He could feel the bone in his own body choking him by the throat and giving him a faint pain. He knew that it was so wrong. The second one. Suddenly, Audrey's arrogant, cold voice arose one more time. A wave of surging soul power arose and sent flames up into the sky. Another member of the Charteris family was killed. Audrey had used her flaming origin to burn his soul altar. That was how he lost his life seal. However, it wasn't easy to Audrey this time. Before he died, he had exploded his god body and used a blood-dripping bone to attack her. With his explosive energy and seething blood, he sent away the blood chi that could shake the sky. Blood splashed on her body. She now had a pale tinge on her icy arrogant face. She seemed to get hurt. However, The bloody bone wasn't smashed under her power. It floated in front of her as it was lonely that it had lost its master. She shouted and a look was shot to her from layers of obstacles. Audrey snorted, looking back and challenging him, "I hope you aren't too weak." Boom. An evil, hostile aura emitted from the bone in front of her. The piece of bone that had hurt her became wild. While its murderous aura shot up into the sky, it trembled for a while before shooting toward the direction her beautiful eyes had sent away the challenge. Just like other bones, this piece of bone also flew towards Shi Yang, hovering in front of him inside a scarlet halo. Audrey looked shocked, but she didn't know what had happened. She just looked at Shi Yang in fright. Having the same panic were Kang Yun, Cecilia, the members of the Charteris family, and Hassan. Impossible. Impossible. Hassan suddenly cried as if he was completely insane. Thick spikes grew on his skeletal body abruptly. Scaly silver armor arose on his skin. The energy of his god body doubled in just a blink of an eye. He rushed through Kang Yun and directly attacked Shi Yang. Chapter 1151, Immortal Body. Chapter 1151, Immortal Body. Hassan's crazy, ear-piercing scream reverberated on the chaotic island. At this moment, everybody could see Hassan risking his life. With the undying god body, Hassan's power had rocketed. He glided and pressed Kang Yun like a cold lightning strike attack. The earth under his feet was torn apart, creating a deep abyss. Many rocks by the beach exploded. Hassan's power was bursting out to the utmost. Shi Yang was holding a bone in his hand while the other three floating in front of him. He looked absorbed in his thoughts. Kang Yun, Cecilia, and Shong Yingyu had lost their target. They were baffled as they looked at Shi Yang from a distance without a clue. As Audrey had just killed one warrior, seeing Hassan aim at Shi Yang in his undying god body, she didn't continue to find another target but watched Shi Yang too. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As Hassan was coming, the four bloody bones in front of Shi Yang suddenly released a wiggling energy fluctuation. Shi Yang frowned and grabbed the three floating bones with his free left hand. He discreetly urged his energy and sent it into those blood-dripping bones. The blood-dripping bones didn't have only the fixation of the warrior who had cultivated death power Upanishad but also an exquisite, complicated formation drawn by blood that seemed to be controlled by Hassan. As Shi Yang received the memory of the enemy, he knew that the formation drawn on the bloody bone was the foundation of the evil contract. Hassan had used this evil formation to control 18 warriors under his command. His soul had connected with their souls to rule them, and at the same time, he could control their blood-dripping bones too. It was a sinister plan that the Charteris had to use that involved those gory bones. The evil formation on the four bones sent out energy fluctuations. The bloodlines wiggled, making the bones struggle and attempting to fly to Hassan. Hassan came like an evil spirit. A pointy tip of a bone emerged from the abdomen of his skeletal body. The brutal, surging energy torrentially circulated around Hassan and made his undying god body even thinner. Shi Yang was astounded. Hassan's god body got thinner in just a blink of an eye. It was very similar to when Shi Yang used the rampage. Being the core member and the outstanding talent of the Charteris family, what he had harvested from the bloody bone wasn't something that his subordinates could have. This man also had special knowledge of using the negative energy through his piece of bloody bone. He could use the bone to urge the negative energy and push his body to the rampage state. It surprised Shi Yang a lot. And the piece of bone hiding in his body wasn't really similar to the ones that Shi Yang was holding. Hassan's bone was much bigger and longer with more fiercer energy. More importantly, that piece of bloody bone had completely fused with him. It wasn't affected by the energy from Shi Yang's acupuncture points. It had become a part of Hassan's god body, a wicked precious weapon, and a piece of his soul. The bloody bone in Hassan's body was the foundation of the skeleton of the expert who had cultivated death power Upanishad. The Charteris family had refined it and made it the eye of the formation, which had the key formation of that evil formation. When he urged the energy from the bloody bone, the four bones in Shi Yang's grip were shaking. The bones released a resistant force as they wanted to get rid of Shi Yang's hand. Kang Yun, Cecilia, Shi Yang, and Audrey didn't have an opponent currently, so they all looked at that area, their faces changing in fear. They were so frightened because of the power Harson was showing. They all found how Harson could affect the bloody bones. They could sense a terrible, evil energy from Harson's god body. They knew that Harson, when he was crazy, would urge the power of the bloody bone as he wanted to strike Shi Yang with his most brutal attack. Kang Yun and Audrey were frightened. They now knew that they had underestimated Harson's toughness. The real competence of this lunatic from the Charteris family was much stronger than what they had thought. This man had the power to fight against Haig. Kang Yun and Audrey suddenly recognized that some rumors they had heard were not just lies. Many people of the God clan said that Harson and Haig didn't get along well. He didn't put Haig in his eyes. Kang Yun and Audrey had heard about this, but they had never thought it was true. However, now they knew that Harson did have the power to fight Haig. Harson had transformed into the undying god body and he was mobilizing the energy in the bloody bone. He was showing his earth-destroying power that made Kang Yun and Audrey think that they didn't have the power to confront him directly. Everybody was dumbstruck to see the power Harson had accumulated. As Kang Yun and Audrey had sensitive soul consciousnesses, they discreetly sensed and found that the energy Harson had condensed was as powerful as what a second sky of ethereal god realm could reach. Unbelievable. Nobody thought that Shi Yang at second sky of ethereal god realm could resist Harson. No one favored Shi Yang anymore. Kang Yun, Cecilia, and Shong Yingyu discolored in fright. They hurried to dash forward to help Shi Yang deal with Harson. What are you waiting for? Stop Harson. If Harson doesn't die, none of us can dodge this Kalpa. Kang Yun's fat face twisted. Unrivaled energy fluctuations gushed out from him. In just a blink of an eye, he crossed Cecilia and Shong Yingyu like a shooting cannonball. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Fuller were standing close to Shi Yang. They discolored upon seeing the savage Harson. None of them answered Kang Yun's call. Quite the contrary, Sho Jiao, the one who held a grudge against Shi Yang, dashed over to help him fight Harson. Of course, no one could confront Harson alone. Everybody knew how formidable he was. The evil, murderous aura shot over torrentially. Harson's undying god body was also bony with many spikes like a ferocious hedgehog. He stormed in the sky, his terrifying energy and dark clouds shading the entire sky. He gave people heavy pressure. Under such pressure, many people couldn't breathe and they couldn't even stand upright. Being Harson's real target, Shi Yang was under an enormous mountain. His knees made crack sounds and slowly sank as if he was about to kneel down. Everybody screamed in their heads. Roar. All of a sudden, Shi Yang let out a wild roar like a strong, savage beast. First, a wave of crazy, bloodthirsty, brutal, fearless, and destructive energy burst out like a wrecking, terrible flood. A blood column that naked eye could see shot right up into the sky from Shi Yang's body. The bone-cracking sounds reached people's ears. Boom, boom, boom. Similar evil-looking spikes jutted out from Shi Yang's shoulders, elbows, and knees. The natural armor emerged from his skin. Shi Yang's god body appeared like a demogorgon who had experienced thousands of battles. This shape of him showcased the beauty of the explosive power. Immortal demon clan, immortal demon clan, immortal body. Audrey, Cecilia, and Kang Yun shouted at the same time. As Sho Jiao was about to join the battle, he was swept away by the wave of crazy, bloodthirsty, brutal, fearless, and destructive energy. He seemed to be held, but he struggled to take another step forward. Everybody was petrified. After so many years, today, on this ancient continent, they finally saw the immortal demon clan, one of the legendary Great Four creatures. The immortal body, the only thing that could rival the undying god body, appeared in their views like that. While the onlookers were still frightened, a massive bloody hand seal arose and pounded on Harson. Death seal. Harson had a dazzling light in his eyes as he shouted. Boom. The intimidatingly crazy energy in Harson's god body was urged, impacting the death seal. A loud explosion that had almost stopped people's hearts from beating reverberated. The space between Harson and Shi Yang suddenly collapsed as if it had sunk into the void that they couldn't see. People then felt that their sight was somehow strangely distorted. Hassan descended from the sky like a giant hammer pounding on the ground. Immediately, he sank into the ground of the ancient continent 20 meters in front of Shi Yang. Shi Yang kneeled, his spikes pierced through the earth as he panted with blood-red eyes. The intimidation of Hassan's power was beyond his estimation. This man was worth the name of the God Clan's Son of Heaven. He could surely compare to Haig. Besides the lucky opportunity of having the origin and lack of placidity, he wasn't weaker than Haig at all. He dared to look down on Haig because he was full of confidence. He wasn't afraid of any young expert of his clan. And only he dared not to put Haig in his eyes. Although Hassan was at ethereal God realm, he could gather the energy of a second sky of incipient God realm expert. This man was really extraordinarily tyrannical. He was worth the title of the future leader of the mad Charteris family. Shi Yang touched the ground with one of his knees and quickly gathered energy. In the massive hole in front of him, Hassan's terrifying energy was rocketing continually. Evidently, he was accumulating energy for the next tremendous attack. Cecilia, Mo Fu, Audrey, and the others were bewildered as they looked at Shi Yang as if they were watching a beast. Except for Kang Yun, nobody knew Shi Yang's real identity. His sudden transformation was unpredictable to anybody. Audrey's persistent arrogance was reduced. She looked at Shi Yang's new shape and felt much better. No wonder why he's so strong. Turns out that he's from the immortal demon clan. I knew it. How could a low human dare to provoke my eminence? It's easy to understand now. Audrey sighed. When she found out that Shi Yang had the immortal demon body, her mental barrier was lifted. Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and Jiao Shan exchanged looks. They could see a shock in each other's eyes. Now when they looked at Shi Yang, they all showed respect. Although the immortal demon clan of the Great Four Creatures had been secluding for so many years, the legend of this clan's power and superiority was everlasting. Every strong clan knew about the intimidation of this clan. They knew that this clan was the prominent clan that could resist the God clan. Mo Fu's team's eyes brightened. Chapter 1152, Frantic Showdown. Chapter 1152, Frantic Showdown. Shi Yang bursting out was a thrill to everybody. While Haig, Phelps, and MIA were dashing toward them, Hassan had shown his real competence, which was against the rules of nature. In this challenge, Mo Fu and Wu Feng hoped that they could finish this battle soon, so they could save more energy to deal with Haig. At the same time, the power that Shi Yang suddenly performed, which could rival Hassan's, was no doubt a tonic to people that cheered them up. Everybody gazed at Shi Yang. With one knee touching the ground, his entire body was covered in armor made of tough keratin, giving people the beauty of power. His spikes gave people a feeling of something so sharp that it could break anything. Waves of evil, bloodthirsty energy gushed out from his god body. His energy was so condensed that it almost couldn't be real. Like a bunch of sinister ghosts, they flew around him, inaudibly roaring and crying as if they wanted to crush and tear the world apart. Boom! In the loud explosions that shook the entire land and mountains, Hassan's bony hedgehog body got out of the ground and he stood in front of Shi Yang once again. Deep inside Hassan's pupils was a dark, sinister halo. A piece of bone jutted out from his abdomen, which was carved in exquisite formation. The evil formation spun like a vortex. It was nibbling and devouring Hassan's blood and flesh, making it more terrifying. Roar! Roar! The roaring of a beast who was about to be extinct came from the mouths of the remaining Charteris family's warriors. As they had pledged to serve Hassan with their whole lives and offered him a wisp of soul seal, they currently acted like wild, enraged beasts. The cold, crazy gleam appeared deep in their pupils, making them fighting puppets without consciousness. Everyone was shivering upon seeing them at this moment. The power of each warrior of the Charteris family increased by 30%. Mo Fu, Fuller, and the others fighting them had to discolor when they burst out as if they weren't afraid of death. Mo Fu's team had to dodge. Hassan's warriors roared and gathered by Hassan like a horde of evil dragons. The bones in their abdomen tore their skin to jut out of their bodies, releasing terrible, brutal energy. They are burning their souls. Audrey couldn't help but shout, her face icy cold. She reminded people to be more cautious. It was worth their reputation of the mad Charteris family. Kang Yun, Cecilia, Wu Feng, and the others changed their visages. They were so surprised and instinctively had such thoughts in their minds. Harson was accumulating energy while his malicious eyes gazed at Shi Yang. After his subordinates gathered, he still didn't move, but the frightening aura on his body was rising higher and higher. And the warriors of the Charteris family also had their power increase, making their general competence much higher. Damn! Kang Yun screamed in fright, his face getting serious for the first time. Harson can draw their energy, so he still can increase his power. Everybody else discolored. When Harson struck his strongest attack, his abundant energy could be compared to second sky of incipient God Realm expert, which was already terrifying. And now as he could gather energy from his subordinates through the sinister contract, how terribly strong could he be? Shi Yang is also increasing his energy. Cecilia covered her mouth in awe. She looked so disbelieving, her sexy body shivering slightly. Everybody looked at Shi Yang, their eyes hot. They were all shocked and baffled. Many of them couldn't help but shout in fright. Shi Yang now had garnet eyes while blood mist covering him, and it diffused the pungent smell of fresh blood. Brutal, wild, bloodthirsty, and fearless energies generated and intertwined to create demons that looked real. The terrifying energy magnetic field he had built was also expanding and increasing, which wasn't less than Harson's. People gawked and dropped their jaws. No one knew that the essence chi of the 4 Charteris warriors and the 2 from Audrey's side had flooded Shi Yang's acupuncture points. He didn't filter or refine it to absorb but used it directly. He forcefully compressed the energy and used it all to create the Death God domain from Third Sky of Rampage. The essence chi of the 6 dead warriors at Third Sky of Ethereal God Realm was used in this battle in conjunction with his own terrifying abilities. Together, they increased his aura. If he had remained the human form, he wouldn't have supported such power. He would have exploded and cracked his lungs and heart. However, in the form of the immortal demon body, he had immortal demon blood running through his veins with immense power. With this domineeringly, tenacious body, he had the ability to join this interesting battle. Harson had used the wicked contract to collect his subordinates' energy, while Shi Yang used the ability of his devouring power Upanishad to capture the essence chi of the dead warriors. Both of them were using extreme methods to rocket their power in just a short time. Don't act rashly. Seeing Cecilia, Shong Yingyu, and Shuo Jiao silently approaching Harson and Shi Yang to try to affect their battle, Audrey shouted to stop them. Unless you guys could boost your energy to their level, you will only get hurt if you go there. Kang Yun's fat face shivered as he said, she's right. Unless you guys could reach their level, you shouldn't come near them. Your bodies and powers aren't enough to endure their attacks. You should just stay away. Although Cecilia's group didn't believe in Audrey's opinions, they knew that Kang Yun wouldn't lie. They hesitated and then stopped. At the same time, Harson and Shi Yang were like 2 wounded beasts roaring and howling. Earth-shaking energy arose from their bodies and expanded everywhere as if they wanted to destroy the entire island. They had created a storm energy magnetic field that could crush everything in its way to nothing. Mo Fu, Shuo Jiao, and Cecilia were terrified. They tried to dodge and use the god power to condense protective light cages. They reluctantly resisted the shockwaves of that energy storm. They staggered as if they were drunk. They wore unhealthy red faces. Apparently, they had consumed a lot of energy just to protect themselves. So strong. All of them shouted in fear. The storm energy that Shi Yang generated and Harson's energy and aura had created hurt their bodies even though they were standing far from them. If they had stood near the center of the storm, would their bodies be torn apart? In the chaotic situation when rocks and sand were twirling everywhere together with a thunderstorm, people couldn't see Shi Yang and Harson. However, they could see Audrey and Kang Yun standing still by the edge of that energy storm. They had to agree that Kang Yun and Audrey were much stronger than them. They weren't surprised to see Audrey because Audrey was the princess of the Imperial Dark Tribe. She should have this ability. They were astounded and curious about Kang Yun, so they started to guess his identity. The energy shockwaves are so tremendous. MIA of the God clan halted while flying through the woods. She looked aghast. Phelps, Haig, and Peyton also stopped. They discolored, looking at the area ahead of them. They all wore dark and solemn faces. The energy fluctuations ahead was so fierce that the barrier between the two territories couldn't hold it within. This group was scared about the shockwave reaching them. Such great energy fluctuation could be seen in the battle of the incipient God Realm experts. Who could do that? Phelps wore a sinister, cunning face. The Charteris family has so many dark and secret techniques, and Harson is a lunatic. One of them should be him. He got this ability. But who is his opponent? The woman who killed Yu Jiao, confirmed MIA. Haig didn't say anything, his eyes cold and placid. He squinted and tried to sense. All of a sudden, he arched his eyebrows and hissed, "No, it's not true." Everybody looked at him. "It's not the woman who killed Yu Jiao. It's the man you said, the one from the immortal demon clan." Haig was scared. The placidity in his eyes was broken. He took a deep breath and lowered his voice. Aside from being a member of the immortal demon clan, he's also an heir of one of the bloodthirstis inheritances. His cultivated Death Power Upanishad. What a coincidence. Death Power Upanishad. Mia's soft body shivered. People rumored that the Charteris family annihilated Xian, his blood brother, and used his skeleton to create the blood-dripping bones. They then carved the secret formation of the God clan, making Harson keep the key bone that controls his subordinates. That's how Harson could be so strong. Well, we would have never expected such a coincidence. We must kill this man. We won't give him room to grow. Otherwise, no one can estimate the consequences. Haig arched his brows and said harshly, "I'll kill him myself." MIA and Phelps were surprised, and then they nodded heavily. "If you do it yourself, I'm sure he can't escape. He shouldn't appear here. He shouldn't expose his identity that early," said Phelps in a dark voice. "Both of them are strong. If I want to deal with him, I have to use my best powers too." Haig darkened his face as he shouted, "Move. We have to get there quickly. Dash." Energy rose in the center of the island in waves of immense, hazy light. The island had earth-shattering energy. Where Harson and Shi Yang were fighting was a place that people couldn't observe. The entire sky was covered by light curtains that shielded people's vision. Each member of the Charteris family sat on the ground as if they were actually petrified. Columns of energy burst into the sky from their heads, which Harson's soul controlled. They were moving like devil dragons that wrecked the area around them into ruins. The ground under their bodies expanded terrifying tremors. Shi Yang's body was like a stone hovering inside a blood sea. His mind flickered, shifting the abilities of the Death Power Upanishad, which made the energy turn into massive bloodhands and shooting blood meteors that bombarded Harson. The sinister demons generated by the negative energy were entangling with the air columns made of the energy of the Charteris warriors. They started to attack them like the evilest, fang-showing monsters. Shi Yang and Harson were fighting each other as if no one was watching. As they were equally strong, they had struck each other too fiercely, and the island under their feet was about to break into pieces. They made the earth and heaven energy in this area change dramatically, triggering the wonders that take place on this ancient continent. Chapter 1153, The World of Five-Colored Light. Chapter 1153, The World of Five-Colored Light. While they didn't notice, the tough barriers that connected the north, south, east, and west territories of the ancient continent had shattered. The abundant earth and heaven energy from the four territories swarmed and squeezed each other, flooding torrentially to the center. The sealed center became vaguely discernible. They could even see what was always hidden there. Auspicious clouds hovered in the sky and drifted to the horizon. Divine grand mountains jutted up and pierced the clouds. Waterfalls and streams spread and meandered. Scattered here and there were clear water lakes that they could see to the bottom. Mist and steam wound above the water surface, moisturizing the peculiar flowers and floras. All of them had created a dreamy, unreal fairyland. Mofu, Cecilia, and the others stood by the edge of the island. They now looked dull and mesmerized as they observed the miracle land of the center. Their eyes were gazing with infatuation at the hazy center. They looked dreamy, as if they were having a beautiful dream. They had thrown the fierce, crazy battle between Shi Yang and Hasan behind their heads. Even the two experts who could gather earth and heaven energy here, Kang Yun and Audrey, couldn't help but observe the center after struggling in the energy storm. They were so happy that they looked almost crazy, shivering in thrill. The area they were watching was what they had craved for when they came here. It was the center that they had to visit. It was the most mysterious and precious area of the ancient continent. That piece of land was called the Spirit Herbal Garden of the Universe. Rumors said that precious treasures were scattered here and there. Every little grass they might step on could contain the surprising spirit chi, which could be a priceless ingredient in some high-level lifestars. The original incipient grade spirit herbs, woods, crystals, and gemstones that were scarce in other lifestars and were things that people had to be crazy for were abundant in the center of this ancient continent. In all the times, the original incipient grade materials were the top precious cultivating materials that the warriors had always dreamed of. As the center was perceptible, the barriers between the territories had disappeared. Everybody could get in and find their opportunity. All the warriors became thrilled as they found the strange, magical center. They were excited to look at the center with desires. They were ready to get over there. Boom, boom, boom. The loud explosions of the hammer breaking the mountain arose like a heavy punch pounding on people's heart. Mo Fu and Cecilia were shivering and turning pale. They were so frightened as they looked around. The immense island exploded in the middle. Mountains collapsed. The island was now like a big tree that exploded. The ground looked like a cake cut into many pieces by a sharp knife, drifting away in the sea territory. Mo Fu, Jiao Shan, Jiao Hai, Cecilia, Shong Yingyu, Sho Jiao, Fuller, the four guards of the Imperial Dark Tribe, Kang Yun, Audrey, and the members of the Charteris family scattered as the island broke apart. Standing on different pieces of land, they drifted away. The barriers between the four territories were torn, revealing the center. Barriers and restrictions vanished. It was the signal that they could enter the center. The warriors following Audrey shouted and gathered by her when the island cracked and drifted apart. They wanted to go with Audrey to the center to take advantage of her ability to sense the commotion of living beings to search for more treasures. Mo Fu, Shong Yingyu, and the others were searching for Shi Yang, and they found that the thick mist arose on the sea. They could hear the sea rumbling, but they couldn't locate Shi Yang. Shi Yang was still having a deadly fight with Hasan. They understood that even if they found Shi Yang, it would be tough to go with him to the center. Many warriors hesitated for a while and then gathered around Audrey. They decided to stick with her. Only Cecilia and Shong Yingyu hadn't moved yet. They hurried to find Shi Yang as they still wanted to advance or go back altogether with him. Kang Yun had already disappeared into the thick mist. No one knew where he had gone or could sense his aura. Big woods surfed above the water. Fuller, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others moved towards Audrey's piece of land rapidly. They hurried to get on the island and gathered by Audrey. They were so excited and they urged Audrey to move faster, taking them to the center. They temporarily forgot Shi Yang at this moment. As soon as they got to the center, they would encounter a lot of death traps. Although the God Clan was strong, they couldn't compare to the fatal restrictions there, which meant that they wouldn't need to be afraid of the God Clan's pursuit anymore. Without the God Clan's threat, how could they have free time to care about others? The reason why they had to gather was to resist the God Clan and got over that challenge before the center opened. Today, they thought that they had finally gotten over that challenge. Do you really think that we can avoid the God Clan when we enter the center? Audrey sneered, her face cold. Naive. The center has the most precious land. Eventually, we will get there. When that happens, we will encounter them for sure. Fuller and Mo Fu gave a dry, embarrassed smile, but they didn't oppose her. Hague is near, Audrey snorted. Before the center has opened completely, we must strike them hard first. Even if we don't go to the center, we still have to face them sooner or later. While Shi Yang and Hasan were fighting, Audrey had sent her soul consciousness far away to sense Hague, Phelps, and Mia's commotions. She knew that they would be here soon. As Audrey found that their whole team didn't come here, she thought that they should seize this chance to strike them hard. She had made up her mind, so she thought that no one should question or object her ideas. She shouted, "Anyone who wishes to go with me, follow me. Once we get to the center, I will not care about the warriors who don't go with me or whether they are dead or alive." The 4 Imperial Dark men gathered by Audrey, their faces solemn. Audrey picked an emerald hairpin from her bun of hair, which had flame carvings supported by purple clouds. This emerald hairpin suddenly had torrential powers like a rising tide. It transformed and enlarged as it was placed by their feet like a jade pillar supporting the sky. The aimless, drifting piece of land was controlled like a boat now had a navigator. The purple clouds on the emerald hairpin seeped into the ground like a flame. This piece of land was now a treasure of Audrey that she could control using her soul. She drove it and moved in a direction deep into the thick mist. Cecilia and Shong Ying-yu were standing in another drifting piece of land. They saw only the hazy sky. Vaguely, they saw the divine Grand Mountain from a very far distance. They knew that it was the center and their destination. However, the 2 women didn't act recklessly. They were anxious as they wanted to see Shi Yang. They wanted to track the direction by the energy explosions. Mo Fu and Wu Feng decided to stick with Audrey, centering her once more time. But these 2 women didn't do that. They deemed Shi Yang as their backbone and the one they should count on. They acknowledged Shi Yang as the leading role only. The barrier is down. It's good for us though. Haig's eyes were so harsh and cold. Abruptly, a divine, powerful energy fluctuation emerged from his body. He had transformed into the undying god body in just a blink of an eye. Beams of 5-colored light radiated from Haig's body and moved around him. The power of the 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, rose and generated in Haig's body like the circle of perfect power with brilliance. Haig's eyes were blindingly brilliant. While his thoughts changed, a bright halo floated behind his head and gave him the impression of the ancient deity that low creatures couldn't trespass. The divine light in gold, green, white, red, and yellow hues held the power and rules of 5 elements that connected, intertwined, and overlapped each other by the light power Upanishad to create a world of the 5-colored light world behind him. It was changing continually and giving Haig a pure, solemn aura of the powerful, tyrannical imperial lord of the world of light. The world of 5-colored light holding the rules of the 5 elements suddenly pressed down. Above the island, they then saw the massive gold sword, the green ancient tree, the sacred white sea, the red sun, and the precious earthy yellow land. The energy of the 5 elements' energy rose and flooded the entire area. The giant gold sword, the divine green tree, the white sacred sea, the red sun, and the yellow land were the 5 treasures of the 5 elements. They scattered, flashed, and then disappeared in the thick mist. Oh gosh, not good. It's Haig. Fuller, Mo Fu, Wu Feng, and the others gathering around Audrey discolored in fright and screamed. They saw the 5 elements' treasures ear the thick mist and press down on them like giant meteors. This kind of earth-destroying aura had suffocated them. The low-realm warriors couldn't even stand straight. They had to bend down and have subdued feelings that made them want to bend to their knees and bow. This pressure suffocated people. The world of 5-colored light. Audrey's face was stiff and cold, frightening energy fluctuating in one of her bright eyes. She let out a cold shout, placing her jade-like finger on her glabella. An imperial lotus throne made of 7-colored crystals floated up. This shining and sparkling imperial throne was made of dozens of thousands of small crystals. Each of them was a precious treasure of earth and heaven with different secret domains of powers Upanishad. This was the marvelous treasure of the imperial dark tribe. Inside that fulgent imperial throne was a dancing soul flame that had just turned into Audrey's image. It was her co-soul that had fused with God-blessed mainland's origin. It could control the changes of earth and heaven with the power of heaven flames. Her co-soul sat neatly on the crystal lotus throne. Abruptly, the throne released the endless fire of karma that then supported the throne to fight against the world of 5-colored light. Dark God Imperial Throne. Everybody screamed in awe as they felt that the terrifying pressure from the world of five-colored light was reduced a lot and they could stand up now. The Dark God Imperial Throne was the top precious treasure of the Imperial Dark Tribe. It was the root of God-blessed mainland. Only the members of the Imperial Dark Tribe with the purest blood who had been approved by God-blessed mainland could control it. It was very famous among the original incipient grade weapons. It could boost the secret techniques and powers Upanishad of the Imperial Dark Tribe. Chapter 1154, Burning Purgatory. Chapter 1154, Burning Purgatory. Imperial Dark Tribe. Haig hid in the middle of the five-colored clouds and shouted. His eyes became dazzling as he cried. MIA, Phelps, and Peyton looked stern as they stood by him. They were also standing on a piece of the broken island. They leaped up, moved through the thick mist, and appeared in front of Audrey's team. MIA and Phelps wore a solemn face. They looked at the Dark God Imperial Throne in between two small drifting lands. They seemed to understand something all of a sudden. The Imperial Dark Tribe was a magical race that could compare to the God Clan among thousands of races. Billions of years had passed and they had always held a crucial role in the cosmos. A long, long time ago, the Imperial Dark Tribe was the overlord of many other races and they ruled the big star areas. The Imperial Dark Tribe and the Heavenly Monster Tribe fought a bloody battle that resulted in the terrible loss of many experts. The Imperial Dark Tribe got tied down and they didn't dare to cause any big commotion later on. Because of this, the God Clan had the chance to rule this universe. Currently, the God Clan was the strongest and they didn't dare to look down on the Imperial Dark Tribe. The God Legions had never dared to reach the Imperial Dark Tribe's territory. The God Clan and Imperial Dark Tribe had continued their tacit understanding that they wouldn't touch each other. They both wanted to avoid disputes that could lead to earth-shattering situations they couldn't manage. However, because of this ancient continent, the two races showed themselves in this place. Eventually, they had parted to opposite parties that fought with each other for the treasures and the secret of the ancient continent. Haig shouted and then quickly sobered. He retrieved the blinding divine light in his eyes. The world of five-colored light quietly changed again. Now, it was a brilliant five-colored light divine boat. The divine boat was made of five-colored divine light with the powers of five elements that was filled with the solemn aura of God that low creatures didn't dare to trespass. The boat floated above the Dark God Imperial Throne. You killed Yu Jia, didn't you? Haig looked at the light divine boat, which was another form of the world of five-colored light and was floating quietly. It seemed to gather more energy. True. Audrey swiftly glided through them and stood arrogantly on the edge of the small island. Her Dark God Imperial Throne was floating above her. She faced Haig without fear. You've broken the secret agreement between the two races, Haig said calmly. The one who tore the agreement wasn't me. It was your clan. Yu Jia took his team to attack me. Of course, I have to kill him, Audrey sneered. Who took action first is not important. What is important is that you've killed my clansman. It's enough. Haig smiled. Thus, you can't blame me. The Imperial Dark Tribe has been secluding for years. You think you can compete with our clan? Sooner or later, you will show yourself and rise the storm. I don't find that it's strange if you aim at our clan today. His eyes emitted the brilliant light once again. Boom. Boom. The dazzling light divine boat had explosions reverberating like thunderclaps. The divine boat moved with tremendous energy that could break the entire sky. Abruptly, it struck the Dark God Imperial Throne. Light ribbons fluttered. The five-colored gusts of wind shot like a meteor from the divine boat together with yellow arrows, brutal lightning bolts, surging flames, a rushing river, and grand mountains. All together, they wanted to crush the Dark God Imperial Throne. Desolate belongs to no one. If the God Clan can come here, so can we. We don't care if you want to use Desolate to kill the prodigies of the other clans. But Yu Jia dared attack me. He was blind, so he deserved death. Audrey sneered while changing her power Upanishad. The Dark God Imperial Throne changed all of a sudden and created a sinister dark abyss where yin winds howled and cried. The commotions in there sounded like it was the house of countless wailing ghosts that was as horrible as hell. This was the world that the Dark God Imperial Throne had created. It was the Dark Night Purgatory. It had connected directly to the mysterious dark abyss of God-blessed mainland where she could release many evil spirits and demons of the underworld. Her Dark God Imperial Throne wasn't weaker than the light divine boat of Hague. Her demons were slowly covering and devouring the abilities derived from 5 elements power. Hague and Audrey were both the future leaders of the God Clan and Imperial Dark Tribe respectively. To get the power of the ancient continent, they had attacked each other right before they could get into the center. Hague came here because of Harson, but now, Audrey had stopped him. He didn't have extra effort to give aid to Harson. However, when Audrey attacked him, he suddenly recognized that as long as he could hold Audrey here, Harson wouldn't have big trouble. Hague and Harson had been competing with each other both secretly and explicitly for years. He knew how terrifying Harson was more than anyone else. He knew that even if he wanted to defeat Harson, he had to bear a significant damage. Thus, he believed that Harson wouldn't lose. He knew this lunatic of the Charteris family and he knew how he could perform formidably and crazily in a bloody battle. Many pieces of the broken island were drifting on the sea where thick mist hovered. The sea now had tremors and earth-shaking explosions and vibrations. Tsunamis and storms were risen, putting the sea in its most violent and furious state. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu were standing on a small rock, watching the tremendous energy wreaking havoc in the sea. They both looked aghast, but they were trying to find Shiyang. However, because of the battle between Hague and Audrey, the sea was more turbulent and chaotic so they couldn't locate Shiyang. While they were restlessly anxious, a big ancient tree pierced through the thick mist, emerging in their vision. A fat body like a mountain of meat was sitting cross-legged on that log of tree. "You too, follow me." Kang Yun appeared all of a sudden. The log of wood stopped by the rock. He squinted and waved at them. "Where is Shiyang?" Cecilia hastened. Kang Yun peered through his small eyes as he smiled, he's still fighting Harson. "But no worries, he'll be all right. You guys should go with me. We're heading to the center first. We will meet him again there." "Are you sure we could meet him there?" Shang Yingyu frowned. "Of course," Kang Yun gave a silly smile. "He and I have an appointment. Why do you want to go with us?" Cecilia was skeptical. "Because you stand on his side, and I also need partners." Kang Yun looked a little impatient. "Audrey is fighting Hague and Shiyang is fighting Harson. Anyway, the center is about to open. Their fights have to cease when it opens. They are the 2 battles that are predestined to have no final results. You guys shouldn't worry about him." Cecilia and Shang Yingyu exchanged looks. They pondered for a while and then nodded. "Let's go," Kang Yun urged. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu swiftly leaped up from the rock and landed on Kang Yun's ancient log of tree. The drifting log accelerated as fast as electricity. It moved with the wind across the sea. The surging sea seemed to not affect the log of wood. On the other side of the broken island, the biggest piece after the island drifted apart, Shiyang and Harson gasped for their breaths. Their god bodies were covered in blood. Both of them had brutal, crazy energy fluctuations. Columns of gas created by the explosive, evil energy in their bodies twirled up into the sky and became strange auroras, just like the stream of energy entering the sky. The phantoms of demons from the negative energy were attacking the columns of gas, making the void explode. Harson had placed the members of the Charteris family on another piece of land. They had run away quietly after receiving a soul message from him. They were heading to the center. Hague's team came when the thick mist started to expand when Harson's troops had already gone. They were the first wave that aimed at the center. Harson stayed to stop them, fighting Shiyang crazily. They were the 2 most brutal animals using their power Upanishads to assault each other. Unexpectedly, they seemed to be equally strong. "Ha. A descendant of a bloodthirstis inheritances. Mwahaha." Harson laughed like crazy, showing his fangs. "Do you know whose bones are these?" "Ha, it's Xian Shan, Xian his little brother. He cultivated death power Upanishad. Our Charteris family killed him and used his bones to create the secret formation. My soul can enslave him forever. So what? Shi Yang's eyes were as red as blood. A vicious, bloodthirsty aura wound around him and made him the most dangerous demon. I will kill you. I will kill all of your subordinates. I will collect each piece of Xian Shan's bones. Ha ha ha. What do you get from collecting Xian Shan's skeleton? You can't beat me, admit it. Hassan laughed crazily. He and Shi Yang had fought for a while on this island. They had used energy, powers Upanishads, and even their bodies to strike each other thousands of times. However, no one had gained the upper hand. Hassan, the warrior that didn't really put hate in his eyes, now considered Shi Yang his equal opponent in this fight for the first time. He had used his best abilities, but he hadn't successfully stopped Shi Yang. Finally, Hassan knew why the elders of the God clan had to wince mentioning the immortal demon clan and the bloodthirsty force. After this battle, he understood that the immortal demon clan and the bloodthirsty force were truly the mortal enemies of his God clan. It's true that I can't do anything to you when you have your troops around. But now, you'll be defeated, said Shi Yang ferociously. Hassan was the important seed of the Charteris family and the future successor. The Charteris family was called the Racial Terminator, and they were the most terrifying blood-dripping sabers of the God clan. The bloody massacres of the God clan in the Big Star area were often carried out by this family. Hassan's power Upanishad was evil and mystic. It was the power Upanishad that could raise his fighting desire to infinity. It kept him in the utmost excited state of mind. This kind of power Upanishad could burn his essence qi, blood, and flesh to strengthen himself. It was an extremely stubborn and crazy power Upanishad, a power Upanishad of mysterious and evil power. It was also the primary power Upanishad of the Charteris family. The God clan's wicked formation carved on the stone steles in the God-perishing land that used the iron chains and the soul-sucking demonic flower to take the blood and flesh of the prisoners were also from the Charteris family. And at the same time, the wounded God warriors staying inside the stone stele were also from the Charteris family. Each member of the Charteris family was a madman. They could burn their own blood and flesh to increase their energy and competence shortly. However, they had to pay a big price. After each battle, their souls and bodies were damaged severely. They had to use the evil formations to refill the consumed energy. Still, they needed time to recover. Most of the God warriors staying in the God-perish land were from the Charteris family. The Charteris family called their power Upanishad the Burning Purgatory. It was the most mysterious, supernatural power Upanishad of the God clan. Chapter 1155, Kang Yun won't get the worst of it. Chapter 1155, Kang Yun won't get the worst of it. Auspicious clouds like beautiful, brilliant fish scales gathered above the center of desolate, the ancient continent. Majestically imposing mountains stood still, supporting earth and heaven and giving people a subduing aura that nothing could compare to. The refreshing scents of grass, spirit herbs, and blooming flowers wound around the place and diffused from the center. They were the diluted heavenly river that calmed and refreshed the minds, making people inhale continuously to enjoy more. They couldn't help but want to get those grass and herbs to improve their strength and souls. The four territories including the glacier, swamp, forest, and the immense sea all had their barriers melted down. Earth and heaven spirit chi of the four territories moved and mingled with each other, creating milky white rivers of energy and flowing towards the center of the ancient continent. The sea territory was a big ocean near the center with many islands and islets. Many silhouettes were moving fast in that area. They were the young geniuses of different clans of this vast universe. A light divine boat created by 5-colored divine light radiated the dazzling light in the thick fog. It looked sacred and solemn, indeed. A fulgent lotus imperial throne made of billions of crystals released a pure and cold aura. However, the center of this throne seemed to connect directly to the sinister hell. Countless evil spirits were crying, howling and trying to get out. The members of the God clan and the other experts from different star areas were performing their best abilities and energy attacks in the middle of the drifting islands. The floating ethereal extents and the God domains had stirred up the sea, rising tsunamis, storms, and tornadoes, which boiled the seawater. On a stream closest to the center, logs of wood pierced through the area like sharp swords. Around that time, warriors of the Charteris family were riding the logs. They all looked dark and cold. A perceptible piece of bone appeared on their abdomen and gave people a clue of something very evil. On the same stream was another drifting log that was pretty far behind them. It carried only 3 people, a man and 2 women. The fat man looked like a giant maggot that had a piercing look as if he could drill through the thick mist to observe the members of the Charteris family. His small eyes squinted to the icy slits. He grinned inaudibly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. All of a sudden, near the center where the Charteris family's members were riding the wooden logs, a surging energy swept over and tried to wreck everything. A massive energy vortex appeared, which looked like the mouth of a giant beast that could swallow the whole sky. They could even see the pointy fangs that were like sharp spears in there. The energy vortex moved and stirred the sea water. Shortly after, it swallowed the logs of wood that the Charteris warriors were riding all together with their riders. The sounds of the massive mouth-chewing things arose from the vortex. Each of the Charteris warriors was struggling crazily and releasing energy. They knew that they had been plotted against. You cultivate water power Upanishad, right? Kang Yun suddenly turned his fat face, smiling mildly and asking Cecilia. Cecilia was surprised, but she still nodded. Yeah. Wait for a little more, I would like you to show your power and let those bastards have fun. Kang Yun's bead eyes had a malicious gleam as he muttered, I used to be bullied by the Charteris warriors in this sea area. I had to use all of my tricks to escape. Today, if I have a chance to repay their favors, I won't let it slip away. I hope you guys would help me deal with them. You had disappeared for a while to set up the trap aimed at the Charteris warriors, asked Shang Yingyu solemnly. Looking at the innocent fat face that seemed harmless to both humans and animals, she suddenly felt a chill in her heart. Behind this man's warm smile, what kind of wicked thoughts did he have? Yep, Kang Yun laughed heartily. He stood up on one end of the log and sent out a beam of pure energy, which made the log surf forward quickly like a dragon. I can get anything, but I won't get the worst of them. I will repay even the smallest thing that they have treated me. Cecilia and Shang Yingyu exchanged looks. They became unnatural as they suddenly felt that this fatty who would repay even the slightest grudge wasn't safe at all. The terrifying vortex appeared in their sight like the mouth of a demon that was chewing food. The Charteris warriors were being dragged into the maelstrom. They were shaken so hard that they felt so dizzy and even the god power in their bodies disordered. You don't need to give me face. Kang Yun laughed until his small eyes became slits and nodded to Cecilia. All right, Cecilia pursed her lips. The sounds of rapid flowing water arose from her plump body. The magical energy bobbed and expanded. The seawater around her rose up into the sky. Billions of tons of water were compressed rapidly. The egg-sized water balls emerged, which were as heavy as a mountain with the energy in the shape of Cecilia. Extremely great water. Kang Yun threw a glance, smiling contentedly and nodding continuously. This was a subtle performance of water power Upanishad, which compressed the water tens of thousands of times to have a pure energy attack as heavy as a mountain. This strike would be flexible like water and be endlessly compelling. Cecilia had compressed the seawater to make drops of extremely great water. They twirled in the sky like pure energy cannon balls that then bombarded the vortex in front of her. Boom! 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 The sea exploded and sent grand mountain-like waves up into the air. The vortex forcefully collapsed into the sea. The Charteris warriors being dragged into the maelstrom disappeared shortly after. You guys continue moving forward. I'm going to the sea to check if I can kill more. Kang Yun cheered loudly and then advised Cecilia and Shang Yingyu. Then, he plunged into the sea like a big worm, diving deeper to the bottom. Who is this man after all? Why do I always feel like something is wrong? After his aura had utterly disappeared, Cecilia mumbled, her face awkward. Unfortunately, Shang Yingyu couldn't explain her doubt as she was also suspicious, trying to guess Kang Yun's real identity. On a corner of the sea territory, earth and heaven energy like a dense heavenly river gathered and poured above Shi Yang's head. I can defeat you because I can urge and collect earth and heaven energy, which is infinite in this ancient continent. You'll be worn out to death. Shi Yang smiled crazily. Earth and heaven energy above his head was forced and formed into an energy giant whose head touched the sky. The giant looked like it was made of thick mist with terrifying energy. It could shoulder the sky and stomp the ground, giving people the impression of an invincible creature. The giant furiously tore and smashed the gas columns that Hassan was controlling from his subordinate's soul energy. It turns out that you've fused with the origin like Hague. Blood trickled down the corner of Hassan's mouth. His face was dark and harsh when he shouted. Warriors with the origin weren't shackled in the ancient continent. Moreover, they could urge and collect the earth and heaven energy there. In this place, this kind of warrior could collect as much energy as he wanted to create a possibly lethal attack. While the two sides were still struggling and losing energy, Shi Yang suddenly struck out his sharp attack that pushed Hassan into a dangerous situation. But it was not only that. After Hassan had just shouted, the bloody bone in his abdomen sent him a heart-pricking pain. His soul altar also throbbed like someone had used the big needle to thrust him. His face paled like a skeletal white-faced demon. He faced the sky and howled mournfully, "Who's killing my warriors?" The Charteris family's warriors with Xian Shan's bones had been interlinked with Hassan. The pain from his bone in the abdomen and his soul altar told him one thing: some of his warriors were dying. Hassan roared sorrowfully. He shot Shi Yang a sinister glare and said, "I will kill you in the center." Then, without waiting for Shi Yang to reply, Hassan drilled into the thick fog immediately and flew away like a bolt of lightning. He was out of Shi Yang's sight shortly after. Shi Yang grinned evilly, but he didn't chase after him. He just sat down cross-legged. He knew that Kang Yun was the one who had killed Hassan's subordinates, and he knew his mysterious competence. It was good for Shi Yang to have some basis to estimate Kang Yun's real abilities when Hassan came there and troubled him. The 4 pieces of blood-dripping bones lay quietly by him. He squinted and released the white mist of negative energy that was entering the bones. He attempted to erase the wicked formation carved on the bones. Afterward, he would make these bones his sharp, fatal weapons. As they came from Xian Shan, Xian his blood brother, they had the essence of Death Power Upanishad, which would boost up his energy and abilities tremendously. The soul consciousness connected the blood bone. His soul quietly moved and urged the Power Upanishad, making his acupuncture points release a suction force. He then twisted his soul consciousness and it extended to a remote area. On the other side of the sea, Cecilia and Shong Yingyu were sitting on a log of ancient wood when a strong vibration appeared behind their back. 3 blood-dripping bones shot out of the sea together with some pieces of internal organs. They flew away as if they had received an emergency call. "It's Shi Yang. It's him, though." Cecilia and Shong Yingyu screamed. They shut their mouths immediately, exchanging odd looks. "Move faster." Kang Yun's voice arose from the bottom of the sea. In the next moment, he floated up and landed on one end of the log. "What happened?" Cecilia asked, having no clue at all. "Hassan the mad dog is coming. He's crazy now. I don't want to risk my life to fight him," Kang Yun said curtly. "He's very dangerous at the moment. Whoever provokes him will receive a very, very bad consequence. Perhaps he would kill altogether. We'd better head to the center. Otherwise, it will be big trouble." Cecilia and Shong Yingyu wore astounded complexions. They knew why Hassan was coming. If Kang Yun hadn't plotted his warriors and killed 3 of them, Hassan wouldn't have chased after them crazily. No one dared to encounter Hassan when he was mad. Cecilia and Shong Yingyu shivered. They pulled themselves together and focused on mobilizing their energy to protect themselves. "Don't be so tense. Before he comes, I will take you 2 to the center. Yeah, it's like I'm doing him a favor. When I meet him, I'll tell him that I've proactively done a lot of things for him. I didn't just watch the fun, right?" Kang Yun beamed a silly smile, using his maximum speed to urge the wood. He shot it like it was a lightning bolt towards the center. Chapter 1156, Desolate. Chapter 1156, Desolate. Lights of the 5 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth moved and generated continuously like the life cycle of earth and heaven energy. The radiant light divine boat was covering the crystal lotus imperial throne. The meandering energy at the horizon of the sea that was like murmuring streams flowed towards the center, which had just opened. The energy of the other 4 territories was drawn all away and it vanished quickly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Shadows of god warriors sitting on the floating logs of wood drifted over. Most of them were Haig's, Mia's, or Phelps's troopers who were ditched behind. They had just arrived in this area. Haig and Audrey were fighting in the sky between 2 small islands using their light divine boat and the dark god imperial throne. They had stirred up the entire sky and place, making the sea seethe tremendously. Mia, Phelps, and the others joined hands to fight Mo Fu, Fuller, Wu Feng, and the warriors who had followed Audrey. Mia's team was in a bad situation. However, after the god warriors came, they could overturn the situation immediately. They began to force Fuller, Wu Feng, Mo Fu, and the others to run away like the rats. Harson was trying his best to dash towards the center. Kang Yun brought Cecilia and Shong Yingyu. They were the first wave of warriors to enter the center. They had already disappeared in the other end of the sea territory. Harson ran to the area where his subordinates were in trouble. After he had gathered them, he brought them to the center and stopped caring about Shiyang. Their auras disappeared from the sea territory shortly after. As Haig and Audrey could see the change of living being auras, they found that there were 2 groups of warriors who had already entered the center. Although they were confronting harshly, they both wanted to finish this meaningless battle quickly. As the 2 parties were equally strong, they couldn't defeat each other in a short time and the time that the center stayed open was limited. Without much hesitation, they parted and streamed into 2 groups heading towards the center. While in the corner of the thick mist-covered sea, Shiyang was sitting and holding the blood-dripping bones. His soul consciousness was winding around like a big net. The life aura of Kang Yun, Harson, Haig, and Audrey had disappeared one after another in this sea territory. Shiyang knew what it meant when he found no one or any soul energy fluctuation. Everyone except for him had entered the center. And Shiyang's soul consciousness found that the barrier between the center and the outer areas seemed to start solidifying once more. His face changed slightly. He put the 7 bloody bones into his fantasy sky ring and stopped his activity of cleaning the evil formation. His thoughts flickered and his soul altar spun to urge the space power Upanishad. The light in front of him moved and drew light rings right in front of him. At a normal speed, Shiyang retrieved his soul consciousness, stepping through the light rings. His body disappeared partially after each step. In the next second, he reappeared by the barrier outside the center as if he had just stepped out of the space slit that helped him cross thousands of miles in just a blink of an eye. Streams of energy gathered from everywhere. Like small rivers congregating into the sea, they all poured into the center. Those energy streams were milky white and they were almost like some liquid that the naked eye could see and the soul consciousness could touch. Only the pure and thick earth and heaven energy at a specific degree could become liquid or visible to the eyes and tangible to the soul consciousness. It spoke up to the fact that Desolate was the place of abundant energy and only this continent could bear countless strange and precious materials that warriors from every lifestar craved for. The reason why Harson, Haig of the God Clan, Kang Yun of the Heavenly Monster Tribe, Princess Audrey of the Imperial Dark Tribe, and the other outstanding warriors of the other star areas like Wu Feng, Mo Fu, Shong Yingyu, and Cecilia gathered here was because of the mysteries of the ancient continent. Warriors from different areas of this cosmos gathered here for one and only reason: the center. The center had given birth to spirit herbs, chalcedonies, and crystals that were the all-priceless items in this world. Also, it would have original incipient-grade materials. To enter the center, the warriors had been fighting for 5 years. Today, as the center had finally opened, the battle between them could be even fiercer and bloodier. According to Kang Yun, the center hid a big secret, which mattered to Kang Yun, Haig, Audrey, and Shiyang, the 4 special existences with the origins. It was the reason why Kang Yun, Haig, Audrey, and Shiyang gathered here. Shi Yang suddenly realized that Shang Chen was asked by an expert of the bloodthirsty force to give him the guiding fruit that would lead him to the center. All was because of the secret of the center. He had no clue what that secret could be. Instinctively, he touched the blood vein ring, frowning and looking at the liquid streams of energy in front of him. He became determined and he stepped in. It felt like the earth and sky were changing their positions. A horrendous vortex suddenly emerged, drawing his body into the center. Shi Yang was frightened, but he couldn't do anything. In the center of that terrifying vortex, no matter what he tried, he couldn't control his body, so he could only follow the vortex spinning. Shortly after, he entered the center of the vortex. He focused and got startled. This vortex was made of white ivory rings that were narrowed inwardly. There were thousands of them. Apparently, those ivory rings were the streams of energy coming from everywhere. They were all congregating in this vortex. This strange phenomenon had frightened him. He was flown towards the center of the vortex that he had tried to struggle against. Unfortunately, he found that he could do nothing but bring pain to his body. It felt like he got punished because he wanted to go against the mighty heaven. He pulled himself together and gave up the useless struggle. Calming his mind, he focused on observing the spinning vortex. Shi Yang was shocked. The massive vortex that seemed to cover the whole world was created by the pure earth and energy, making each of the rings. They were moving by some principles of nature. After he had given up struggling to sense, he found that the moving principle of the vortex was pretty similar to the acupuncture points in his body when they filtered the essence qi of the dead. When this thought emerged, he couldn't help but feel shaken. He pulled himself together, his mind and his will concentrating on the magical features of this vortex. The soul altar began to spin all of a sudden. The magical black hole in the center suddenly throbbed. Shi Yang was perplexed. After a while, he urged his host soul, moving to the black hole. He was frightened to see a massive vortex filling the mouth of the black hole. That vortex used the fine soul threads to create the rings, which seemed to be the most marvelous structure in this world that released magical energy fluctuations that nothing could compare to. 720 acupuncture points in his body, the black hole in his soul altar, and the vortex that was stirring his real body around were created by the smaller or bigger vortex, which had amazingly similar movement patterns. They seemed to come from the same features of the Power Upanishad. As he came to that conclusion, he totally gave up his resistance and just let the vortex draw his body. At the same time, his soul consciousness was moving around the acupuncture points in his body and the devouring Power Upanishad was moving around in the soul altar to find some connection. After an unknown time, rumble. He suddenly felt so dizzy. He fell like a meteor and hit something hard. He hadn't recognized that he was lying at the foot of a mountain inside a blooming flower bush with his eyes closed. He looked as if he was sinking in a beautiful dream, flying around a fairyland without wanting to go back. Fresh flowers bloomed around him in many colors with a sweet fragrance. Transparent amber drops of nectar oozed out from the flowers, which were like mirrors that could show his reflections. It was a flowery valley that had no creature besides Shi Yang laying here. It seemed like this valley hadn't received any visitors for billions of years. It remained in its most primal condition, which didn't have any trail. Grand mountains lay in layers. Earth and heaven energy floated like rivers from heaven. Rainbows crossed the sky like bridges leading to fairyland. 5-colored auspicious clouds that looked like they had their own consciousness floated in the river of energy. This world was so calm. Shi Yang didn't even hear a single sound. Pretty far from him was a majestic holy mountain that connected the sky and earth. Its summit pierced deep in the sky where terrifying energy vibes were sent out. That holy mountain seemed to be the heart of the ancient continent and the control center. It was where the continent managed the transmigration and the pulsation of the ancient continent. The mountain could touch both the sky and the ground at the same time and it had its own consciousness. If someone could stand on the peak of that holy mountain, he could observe the entire place and see countless mountains, lakes, sea areas, forests, deserts, volcanoes, and even the glacier. This position was like the eye that could observe every detail around. That I could see many tiny shadows like little ants moving around the rivers, deserts, mountains, and lakes everywhere. Those were the outstanding young talents from different races. They were scattered around the edge of the center while the grand, holy mountain was in the center. Even the surroundings of their current locations were pretty similar to the first 4 territories they had visited. If they could sense carefully, they would find that the earth and heaven energy here was moving totally differently. The energy fluctuations in their current areas hid the dangerous, murderous aura and flooded every corner. They could support each other. The entire center area was like a massive death trap that nature had created. This death trap consisted of deadly formations, forbidden lands, and dangerous topographies of different pieces of land. This grand masterpiece was like the work of mighty heaven. Without any extra add-on, it was like a training court that nature had built for many creatures. The holy mountain standing imposingly in the center to connect earth and heaven was the center of the death trap, the soul of the ancient continent. It could hold everything in its hands. Just like a cold, nonchalant archangel from the sky watching the feeble creatures struggling with their strong wills and operating by the rules it had set up, it would reward them properly. Compared to it, all warriors who had come here were just weak insects. Even Haig, Kang Yoon, Audrey, and Shi Yang, the ones who had fused with the origin, were just special insects. They still needed to follow its rule to survive. And it didn't have any emotion that any creature should have. It just watched everything with indifferent eyes. Chapter 1157, Someone Lives, Someone Dies. Chapter 1157, Someone Lives, Someone Dies. Shi Yang was lying in the middle of a flowery valley, his body crushing many fresh flowers. He closed his eyes as if he was fast asleep. His face looked calm and peaceful as if he was having the most beautiful dream. Magical, crystal-like nectar dripped from the flowers with the most pleasant fragrance, reflecting his body. All of a sudden, something strange happened. His reflections in those drops of nectar suddenly jumped out of the drops like they were his souls in the fantasy dreams. The shadows that had his shape all flew into his soul altar and moved in his sea of consciousness. Shi Yang's clear mind was suddenly invaded. His brain sent him a pain that was like a pricking needle. His study of the massive vortex was forced to stop. He opened his eyes and saw his own images floating in his sea of consciousness. Although they looked exactly like him, he couldn't contact them. They were like phantoms. When those phantoms glided above his calm sea of consciousness, they rose the waves and started riding on the gusts. Wisps of his soul consciousness were pulled out by those phantoms forcefully. Shi Yang felt the hair on his nape rising. Those shadows that could just be illusions were trying to invade his soul and dig into his sea of consciousness. They wanted to make him a body without a soul. He was frightened when his spirit, soul, and chi were invaded. While his thoughts were changing, he tried to urge his soul altar to use the powers Upanishads to burn them down. Abruptly, he was dumbstruck. In his soul altar at the tier of powers Upanishad, heaven flames, and the black hole, and even by the host soul, Shi Yang found many illusions of himself. However, they had floral auras. They were trying to force his soul and compressed him like a horde of conquerors. Those floral spirits wanted to control his soul and control his god body and all that was him. Shi Yang discolored in fright. Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Soul messages that shooed him away thundered in his mind continuously. Those came from the phantoms that were invading him. Shi Yang felt that his head was exploding as if there were billions of people cursing and chanting to make him leave. They wanted to break his mind and spirit, which would expel his soul from his body and leave his soul altar unowned. By his lying body, countless beautiful flowers were swaying and droning as if they were supporting billions of wisps of different consciousness in his brain. They wanted to make him give up and leave him a body without a soul. They were forcing him to give up his body. Court death. His unyielding will of steel wasn't defeated by the chanting and hostile shouting. His soul altar moved and flashed as his acupuncture points were urged. The 720 acupuncture points were different worlds of revolving vortexes. Abruptly, torrential negative energy including bloodthirsty, destructive, desperate, resentful, and crazy emotions flooded like a massive sea. Almost instantly, they sank his entire body. Inside his soul altar, a black hole was activated. The devouring power Upanishad sent out a terrifying suction force. Countless thoughts of feeble despair were generated and multiplied in his head. The shadows that had intruded his brain started to struggle and wriggle as they found the terrifying threat. They wanted to retreat and get out of his god body immediately. Different negative energies appeared in his acupuncture points and created a layer of flesh and keratin to shroud his entire body. Those people that looked exactly like him couldn't pierce through the layer. They were kept inside. They could only send him a begging message to ask for his mercy. Swoosh, swoosh. Just like a big whale sucking water, the shadows that looked like Shi Yang turned into flows of essence qi that were drawn into the black hole. All of them were devoured shortly after. All sorts of distracting thoughts disappeared in just a blink of an eye. His soul altar could spin again. However, Shi Yang felt that his spirit was shaken as his host soul had a magical feeling of eating some great tonic. He felt so refreshed as if his soul was cleaned once. This feeling was very similar to the time he had his soul cleaned some time years ago. And his soul was nurtured tremendously. Beams of essence of the floras around him flew out from the black hole and seeped into his soul altar like the most delicious wine. Suddenly, his soul altar was purified once. Shi Yang pulled himself together, checking his situation and surroundings. He was astounded. Withered flowers and grass were around him on an area of hundreds of miles. He was lying in the center of this valley of dead floras. Within his sight, there was no living flower. He was surprised for a while before he could understand the situation. Pondering for a while, he vaguely understood it. The shadows invading his head were the spirits of the flowers and trees in this area. After tens of thousands of years taking in the earth and heaven energy in this area, they slowly gained intellect, so they wanted to have another chance to advance and evolve. They knew that the tree or the grass couldn't bear their consciousness and they couldn't have a new life if they stayed within those shells. They had a terrible urge to find a better container. Apparently, Shi Yang coming here all of a sudden had given them hope. They seized the chance while he was learning the magical features of the vortex to discreetly get into his brain and stir up his soul altar with their special methods. They had acted as if his soul was actually their home and Shi Yang was just a stubborn guest who didn't want to leave. If he hadn't had the evil negative energy in his acupuncture points that could make the black hole use its power, his host soul could have been expelled. And those floral spirits could have had a chance to build their new life form using his soul altar. With his god body as the foundation and the floral spirits as the soul, they could have given birth to a brand new race. Looking at the withered vegetation that was in all directions around 100 miles away, Shi Yang contemplated for a while. His eyes were fixed to a holy mountain standing afar. Shi Yang frowned as he found that his soul consciousness was like it was moving in a foggy area. It couldn't give him any useful information. He couldn't sense any strange commotions. In this area, his extraordinary ability seemed to be ineffective. Shi Yang had a vague feeling. He felt that the majestic holy mountain was coldly looking at him like an archangel watching a tiny, vulnerable ant. It could use the power of nature to force any creature to act as it pleased. It would never allow anyone to trespass its rules or change anything. Shi Yang didn't have any evidence for this feeling. He didn't know whether he should cry or smile. However, he could actually sense its existence. It wasn't something vague, though. He remembered what Shang Chen had told him. Desolate had its wit. It had a life and consciousness. It was a form of life that was totally different from any other race. Right in the dawn of this cosmos, it was there and it used its own methods to affect the vast universe. Desolate was the most mystic and wonderful existence in this universe. No one could affect it. It only affected them in its unique way. Shi Yang looked at the holy mountain and deeply felt this strange intuition. He suddenly believed Shang Chen's words without the slightest doubt. Desolate wasn't only an ancient continent. It was a unique life form with consciousness and intellect. Confirming this, he suddenly stood in awe of the holy mountain. He hesitated for a while before sitting cross-legged on the ground where he was surrounded by the withered flowers. He stroked the fantasy sky ring to take out the 7-colored spirit flower. His deep co-soul emerged from his pupil and covered the crystal that sealed the seven-colored spirit flower. The seven-colored spirit flower could fuse the heaven flames of the origin together. It was a crucial item to warriors who had heaven flames. It could increase the integration degree of the flaming origin in their co-soul. His co-soul was made of 10 different heaven flames. When he was in the fountainhead of Powers Upanishads, he had fused the earth flame, the purgatory flame, and the vermilion bird true flame into one. Today, his co-soul still had 8 heaven flames that had infused with each other. On the day he saw Audrey, he knew that the integration degree of his heaven flames in the co-soul was far behind Audrey's. And he now knew that the marvelous connection between the co-soul and Grace Mainland was related to the degree of his fused heaven flames. Thus, as he knew he was relatively safe here and no one would come to disturb him in a short time, he didn't spend time to investigate the mysteries of this ancient continent. However, fusing the heaven flames of the origin co-soul was his most urgent task. He tried to use the seven-colored spirit flower to fuse the heaven flames with different natures. In a corner of the center where there was a burning desert, 2 graceful figures were walking in between a rocky area in the middle of the desert. Their clothes were damp and stuck on their bodies. The yellow sand was like red iron. The women had to mobilize God power to their feet and create an energy layer to resist the scorching sand. In front of them were mountains ranges where they could see the majestic holy mountain between the other peaks. However, even though the 2 of them had walked through the desert for a long time, they couldn't cross this desert. They could see the mountain ranges, but they couldn't reach them no matter how hard they tried. Gradually, a desperate feeling churned in their hearts. The 2 figures were Cecilia and Shong Ying-yu. In a volcano, hot lava was erupting and sending deadly flames with rumbling fiery energy. Sho Jiao, Jiao Shan, and Jiao Hai were in the flaming lava pond. They were trying to get out of this hell-like area. They wanted to get out of the volcano mouth. They had fallen into this volcano mouth after their vortex had drawn them away. The extremely high temperature of this area had melted one warrior who had accompanied them. Before that warrior had fallen into the lava pond, he was careless and he didn't use the God power to create a protective halo. Thus, he was killed instantly. In the gloomy, tranquil glacier, Wu Feng, Mo Fu, and the others were frozen. They were now ice sculptures in the glacier. Energy rippled through them as if they were attacking the ice and were trying to get rid of this icy confinement. In an area where the tornadoes were wreaking havoc, MIA, Man, and the others were struggling to steady their bodies. They couldn't stand still and from time to time, they had more cuts on their bodies by the wind blades. They were struggling very hard to get rid of this tiring situation. In the other places of ponds, lakes, desert, and glacier, the warriors came from the island including Haig, Phelps, Audrey, MIA, and Kangyun had fallen into different death traps. They were trying to survive. Some warriors were killed. Some warriors eventually found a way to escape the death traps quickly. At the same time, a small number of warriors had soon escaped their deadly situation with some bonuses and advantages. They were cultivating and advancing to another level. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,